He spent his life escaping reality through one game, until the game became his new reality. But instead of a hero, he wakes up as a stuttering failure prince, already marked for assassination. Armed with only a strategy guide and gamer instincts, he's about to rewrite the fate of a forgotten extra. Can the weakest character become the game's ultimate wildcard? Let's find out. The story began with the main character, who was in a dungeon and fighting monsters, excitedly started running away and wondered how this was possible. He can't believe that he ran into a dragon, fell off a cliff, was attacked by a squad of monsters, and flew on a dragon. Not long ago, he was the most ordinary unemployed man in his 30s. How did a simpleton become who he is? The audience will ask. He himself would like to know the answer. And also about his damned fate. Suddenly, a knight ran up to him, and having cut down the monster, excitedly told him to get it together. Sometime earlier, the main character was sitting at his laptop and, having read a message in the chat of one player saying that he was looking for someone who wanted a second chance in life, asked what was wrong with this weirdo. Is someone else also going through miserable hell? Wait, when did he write that? MC leaned back in his chair and thought that life is not a game, so what other second chance? It would be great if it turned out to be true. A second chance at life. His life can be divided into 3 parts. He grew up in an orphanage without parents. After graduation, he worked at a factory. Now, at 30, he works part-time while preparing to pass the civil service exam. And this is the end. The only joy in his dull life is this game called God-Forsaken World. God-Forsaken World. He has been playing this for over 10 years and has already become an experienced veteran who knows all the strategies. In 30 years of life, he has acquired only a one-room apartment and this game. If life had given him a manual, would everything have turned out differently for him? Suddenly, the player wrote in the game chat again that whoever is ready for a second life, let them go forward. The protagonist, having read this, noted with a smile that he apparently has nothing else to do. Well, he's no better than him. Maybe he should just chat with him? He wrote in the chat that he agreed to a second life. The player asked if he was sure. It wouldn't be that easy. The protagonist noted that he was writing nonsense and asked to take it seriously. He thought that it was boring. Maybe he should ignore him? The MC wrote in the chat that this was definitely better than what he had now. The player told him that it sounded good. He thought in bewilderment. Is that all? No drama? No remorse? He wrote him nonsense, and then nothing? Suddenly a voice was heard in his earpiece saying that this time he should just try to survive. In an instant, the protagonist disappeared, and after a while, waking up, he frightenedly wondered what was happening. What was on his face? Was that a gag and his hands were tied? Maybe he was kidnapped? But when did they do that? Wait, why him at all? Are they really going to sell him for his organs? Bamilo Dimark, the captain of the mercenaries, removed the bag from his head and noted that he was the 3rd prince of the magical empire of Walt, Gilroshan Elro de Walt. Let the others take out the gag. When the bag was removed from him, the protagonist saw several men in front of him. Bamilo approached him and told him to raise his head, open his eyes wider, and look at him. Yes, the face is the same, he is sure. MC, in wild shock, thought that this is a fragment from the game, the incident with the kidnapping of the 3rd prince. It was as if he was in a dream, but had he ever had such dreams before? Everything seemed strangely familiar to him. Bamilo, with a serious face, warned him that he, as the 3rd prince, should not try to do anything weird. The protagonist wondered in bewilderment. Why is he calling him that? Is this some kind of joke from the fans of the game? He turned around and said that he was being executed today in the name of the Republic, and his head would be sent to his father. The protagonist excitedly called out to him and said that there was some misunderstanding. Bamilo took out his sword and lightning fast pointed it at his neck, asked, "Didn't he ask not to do stupid things? He may be just a worthless prince, but he has the blood of the emperor. When he sees his decapitated body, he will not be able to just laugh." MC was frightened to think that this is not some stupid joke. This is all for real. He is the 3rd prince with the shameful rank, Gilroshan, also known as the Pig Prince. He dropped out of the succession race due to his laziness and strange behavior. This 3rd prince in the game is a low-ranking nobleman with a few lines, like a background NPC. At this point, his lines end. Wait, if he is an NPC, then who is the player? Bamilo, pointing his sword at him, asked if he has anything to say at the end. The MC responded in fear that he didn't understand what was going on, but he wasn't the 3rd prince. He wondered if he really thought they would believe him. His bright red eyes were proof enough that he was the prince. He shouldn't try to deny it. He couldn't escape. The protagonist wondered in fear. How was this possible? Was he not even the main character? Was he given the body of a background character and was about to be executed? He asked in a trembling voice, what kind of cruel joke was this? The mercenary swung his sword and replied that they had nothing personal. He would do everything quickly and painlessly. The protagonist closed his eyes and thought excitedly that he couldn't die like this. He had one thing he absolutely had to do, but what was it? Suddenly, time stopped around him. He opened his eyes in confusion and wondered, why was there no pain? Wait, did it stop? What the hell was this? A system window appeared saying that the game had started. The player selected a character from the Walt Empire, Gilroshan. MC, with tears in his eyes, joyfully exclaimed that he was saved. He thought that he could survive as a player. This is the world of the game he is crazy about, and in which he is a professional. He can be called a walking manual. System windows appeared saying that the player was given starting rewards. He received 3 attribute points, 2 ability points, and a task to survive the crisis. The protagonist thought that attribute points would improve his skills and ability points to master techniques. The obvious goal of the task is to survive. Everything froze as if he pressed pause. He can move only as far as the situation allows. Here, as in the game, he was given a little time to make a decision, and this means that he will return at that very moment. The points and the task can be dealt with later. Something else is important now. It depends on whether he will survive or die. Suddenly, the system provided a lot of cards and explained that fate cards determine the class, give unique characteristics, abilities, equipment, and storylines. From 1024 random cards, he needs to choose one. The number of cards available for absorption is 1. The cards begin to shuffle. MC, watching this, thought that choosing the right card requires skill, but what comes out is pure luck. There will be no more shuffle until level 10 or a quest reward. Everything depends on this time. He will see what Lady Luck says. A moment later, 3 white cards appeared in front of him. The protagonist thought that when he makes a choice, the game will resume. Depending on luck or choice, a sword can cut through him like tofu and decapitate him. It is an exciting feeling. Okay, now he needs to choose. Even in this situation, curiosity overcomes him. He can't do anything. The protagonist chose a card with a smile and said, "Let the system show. Is this the path to glory, to a dung heap, or to the edge of a cliff?" He thought that in the game, few people know the first rule of shuffling. It is that one of the 3 cards is always a melee card, which at least ensures a reliable game. In addition, the average rank of the 3 cards is B. MC, having chosen a card, said, "Let something simple fall out. For example, a decent A-rank tank." He is not asking for the impossible, right? The card contained a picture and the inscription, F rank, gladiator slave. He chose the second card in surprise, and a system window appeared, which said that a third-rate D-rank theater actor appeared. The protagonist thought in wild surprise that in the first draw, the average rank of the cards is B. And does this mean that the third card has an S rank? He asked happily, "Is it really an S rank?" In an instant, everything around him sparkled and a card turned around, saying that it was EX rank, Supreme Mage. The protagonist asked in surprise, "What the hell was this?" He thought that it was hard for him to comprehend, since EX rank is the highest possible rank. Even he had never received a card of this rank since the beginning of the game. Regarding the Supreme Mage card specifically, it is essentially the best for long-range attacks. But how could something like this pop up at the very beginning? Could it be because he is not a player character, but an NPC? That is probably true. The body his consciousness is currently in belongs to an NPC named Gilroshan. He is called a good-for-nothing prince, but unlike a custom character created by the player, he has a past and blood relationship with a key figure. Moreover, in the original story, the Walt Empire family is known for producing incredibly talented mages for several generations. Okay, it's time for him to make a choice. The pity is that there is a card here that can save his head. The problem is that it is not the card of the Supreme Mage. Of course, the cards come with bonus stats, unique abilities, exclusive gear, and a story. But the only thing that can be used right away is the 3 unique abilities. Among the abilities of the Archmage, there is a defensive one, Domination of the Field. But the effect of this ability is only applicable against magic or magic weapons. And what's more, all magic abilities require time to extract mana from the circle around the heart and materialize the spell. And yet, how can you refuse such a card? If he were not a veteran, he would probably choose the Archmage and lose his head. In the game, he would simply be reborn, but here everything is different. NPCs do not return after death. If his head flies off, he dies for real. He feels the cold blade on his neck. It is a real object. It is simply incredible. Whoever moved him into the game, their motive is unclear to him. Not only was he shoved into the body of an additional character, but also at the very moment when he was supposed to lose his head. And the Archmage card was slipped in as a cruel joke. But he will not die here. MC confidently selected the card and a system window appeared, which said that an F-rank gladiator slave was selected. Is he sure? The protagonist dejectedly noted that he did not think that the day would come when he would throw away an EX rank card for a third-rate one. This is very funny. He says goodbye to the Supreme Mage card. He hopes that they will see each other again sometime. System windows appeared, which said that the F-rank gladiator slave card was automatically equipped. 3 unique abilities exclusive to the gladiator slave were obtained. The protagonist asked discontentedly, "Are they kidding me or something?" He really got his share of luck. He's very grateful. He thought that when a player draws an unsuccessful card, the only way out is to try again. However, in this situation, there is no such option. In the game, this guy died here and bled to death, but now he is in his body and they will survive. And how to use the ability? Suddenly, a system window appeared, notifying that the game was resumed. Everything began to move at lightning speed, and the mercenary delivered a slashing blow with his sword, and then turned away and remarked that they were all great. They needed to get back quickly. They would go along the planned road through the gate on Mount Lochman. One of the mercenaries called out to him and noted that the third prince did not die. He said in surprise that this was impossible. His head should fly off. MC, clutching his neck, thought with a horrified look that he was lucky that he intuitively figured out how to use the ability. But what a disgusting feeling. A system window appeared, which said that the ability was successfully used. This ability cannot be used again for 24 hours. 3 abilities of a gladiator slave: preference for masochism, preference for sadism, preference for restraint. Masochism's preference: when the user takes non-lethal damage and does not take damage after that, mental and physical recovery are greatly enhanced. Cooldown, 15 minutes. Sadism's preference: allows the use of a flashy move that causes a dramatic bleeding effect but deals minor damage. Cooldown, 15 minutes. Restraint's preference: allows the user to ignore one fatal blow if the user is tied up or immobilized. Cooldown, 24 hours. MC thought that the reason he chose a stupid card instead of an EX ranked one was because it was an infamous card among players who enjoy perverted playstyles. The abilities seemed useful at first glance, but each one had a flaw. The main problem was that there was rarely an opportunity to use them. That was why this card was rank F. If they came up again, he would be out of luck, so he had to act first. The mercenary called out to him in surprise and asked why his head was still there. He doesn't know what he did, but it won't work anymore. The protagonist angrily called out his name and shouted that this was impudent. Bamilo asked in confusion, was he crazy? No. More importantly, how did he know his name? The protagonist stood up and angrily asked, didn't he recognize his master, who now inhabits this body? Him was master. He was the god of vengeance, Eolim. He thought that these people were a group of vengeance priests of the Eolim Supreme Church, followers of the god of vengeance, and also, ironically, murderers. The Eolim Supreme Church is one of the 3 major groups that belongs to the Revolutionary Army. This group wants to overthrow the empire, so kidnapping the third prince is natural. To survive, he'll have to act like the third-rate theater actor on that card. No, he must be better. The protagonist continued that he descended into this body. Their god is here. Let them untie him quickly. Bamilo pointed his finger at him, surprised, asking that he was Eolim's vessel. MC grabbed him with his palms and shouted that this was impudent. How dare he point his finger at the body he inhabits? Has he really lost his mind? This fool dared to raise his hand against him? Seeing the others' reactions, he wondered if this was too much. No, he couldn't hesitate. Eolim would have behaved like this. In this game, most of them are very annoying and like to interfere in the affairs of the world. As a result, both large and small incidents constantly occur. When the game first came out, many players thought that Eolim was just an unfortunate god. However, he is the god of vengeance. As befits a god responsible for vengeance, he thrives on wars, conflicts, showdowns, and chaos. That's why he often shows himself to his followers, which will play into his hands at least for now. Bamilo replied that he understood. And yet, could he instill faith in their foolish subjects? MC asked furiously, dare he say that he lacks it? Fine, he will instill faith in him. Last week he presented a golden statue to his altar. Did he really think that he wouldn't notice that this object was only gilded? Did he think that he wouldn't find out about his gilded prank? Were they all tired of living? Let them untie him quickly. The captain of the mercenary priests ordered the others to untie him. They came to him and began to apologize excitedly. The protagonist thought that many seemed to fall for it, which was surprising. Who would believe that the scoundrel Prince Gil-Roshan was capable of doing something like that? However, old Bamilo still suspected him. A system window appeared with a description of the character, which said that he was the high priest of the High Church of Eolim. The protagonist thought that he led a group of priests of vengeance and had a cold temperament. In the Revolutionary Army, he was known as the organizer of the incident with the murder of the third prince. Bamilo bowed his head and apologized for not acknowledging him. The protagonist, seeing this, thought that he was currently in thought, so he would watch for now. He asked displeasedly, did he really not want to tell him anything else? What are they doing anyway? Let them immediately fall to their knees. All the mercenary priests followed the order and began to apologize. Bamilo noted that they were begging for his forgiveness. Seeing him was an honor they did not deserve. However, why did he condescend personally and not send an oracle to the high priest? MC thought that this insightful old man still did not believe him. And the other one too. Who were they anyway? He needed to protect himself better. He approached him and explained that Prince Gil-Roshan would be his personally chosen apostle. No one would dare lay a finger on him. Bamilo looked at him in confusion and asked him again, what did he say? The protagonist thought about his expression as if he had eaten feces. Well, it was understandable. He had lost an important goal that he had worked so hard to obtain. He replied that Prince Gilroshan would join their revolutionary army one day. Did he understand? Bamilo agreed and added that they would spare the third prince and come back as he wished. The protagonists thought that if they returned now, they would learn the truth from the high priest and then come for him again. It was clear from his look that he was sure that he could kill him any time he wanted. There must be a traitor in the empire, someone hiding behind a curtain of conspiracy. Under no circumstances would a member of the imperial family, no matter how worthless, be left to die unless both parties were involved. Besides, there were too many people who wanted Gilroshan dead. The empire was a prison for him, a closed cage with no way out. MC warned with a smile that this should remain a secret. The third prince would not return to the palace. He would go to Orax and soon become an apostle, so he had to prepare. Bamilo asked excitedly why he had decided so. He had ordered that they protect this child on the way to Orax. No, let them not just protect her, but treat her as the most precious thing. The protagonist thought that Orax was the largest city in the west and the capital of the Revolutionary Army, an enemy territory of the Empire. But it was safe there, since he knew the plot. And also, the more a person knows, the more he will gain. It's a pity that he missed the card of the Supreme Mage. And yet, he still has plenty of opportunities to cheat. The protagonist turned away from them and asked what they were doing. Let them go already. He thought with a smile that in order to make this worthless character a powerful character, he would have to cheat at every step. After some time, they set up camp in the forest. Mercenary priests began to give him different foods, argue about who had the best and say let him try. MC, having lost a lot of weight, excitedly replied that they were going to pierce him with skewers now. Let them stop shaking this in front of his face. Besides, he is losing weight and cannot eat much. They began to say that Lord Eolim ordered to treat him as an honored guest. They will not be able to look him in the eye if they do not do this. The protagonist thought, should he play along with them or something? Are they a group of vengeance priests or Boy Scouts? These are not the eyes of murderers, but simple boys. He said with drool, let them stop. He is hungry, but he is holding back. The priests replied that one piece will not hurt. He will not get fat if he eats and enjoys it. One of them asked with a smile, what does he have to lose? Why lose weight at all? He has a good body, let him eat heartily. MC noted with displeasure that he was lying to his face. He thought that losing weight is the worst thing. Suddenly Bamilo came and menacingly asked what they were doing. Who was on guard anyway? The protagonist thought that this was what one would expect from the high priest. He noted with a serious face that they were all too relaxed. Did they forget that they were on imperial territory? Let them get up quickly. The mercenary priests obeyed his order and went to keep guard. Bamilo sat down next to him and said that they were acting like this out of loyalty. He shouldn't think badly of them. The protagonist replied with a smile that he knew and wasn't offended. The captain held out a piece and remarked that bird meat was the best. He started eating it and said that he was joking. It belonged to him. The MC replied with displeasure that he was terrible. Bamilo, throwing the bone into the fire, remarked that he had lost a lot of weight and in just 4 days. The protagonist replied that he didn't even expect that such a thing was possible. The high priest said that he had seen many different people while training to be an assassin in the church, but he had never met anyone as determined as him. The protagonist interrupted him and asked, at first he didn't understand how to smuggle such a piece of fat out of the empire, right? He thought that even he saw that Gilroshan's body was not in order. The MC remembered how he fell to the ground while on the way and wondered, what kind of body is this? He can't get up. A system window with character information appeared, which said that his nickname is the Pig Prince. Fate, a gladiator slave. Level 0, Strength 35, Intelligence 68, Endurance 9, Charisma 61. Total, 173 points, the remaining points are 3. He wondered if he really had a single-digit endurance indicator. The average NPC has a total of about 200 attribute points and endurance points are 40-60. With 9 endurance points, you can consider this body a corpse. He needs to increase his endurance at all costs. While he is busy with this, he will lose weight. Bamilo, seeing him, noted that they did not walk for long. He could not be tired already. One of them said that things were bad. Staying with him in this situation is dangerous, but he cannot leave him because of the order of Mr. Eliam. Maybe they should give him a potion? MC, hearing this, thought that he should not take potions from them because the priests of retribution may need to fight in his place. How bad it is to be a burden. He smashed his forehead and answered with a serious face that he did not need potions. They continued on their way. A system window appeared, notifying that the ability Preference for Masochism was activated. The ability will be activated for 30 seconds. When the user receives non-lethal damage and does not receive damage after that, mental and physical recovery are greatly enhanced. Cooldown is 15 minutes. The protagonist thought that critically low stats can be easily raised without investing points. He would rather smash his head than be a dead weight. During the entire journey, the protagonist constantly smashed his forehead to temporarily increase his stats. The priests, seeing this, asked in surprise, "Is this really that outcast Prince Gilroshan? He is quite a stubborn person." At the end, a system window appeared, notifying that his stamina had increased due to his hard training, and the value was now 37. At this point, MC thought that this was just the beginning. He had a long way to go. But Milo called out to him and said that tomorrow they would reach the teleportation gate he had used before. This place would transport him to Orax. However, there was a problem. They had come to kill him, not take him alive. No one expected him to be a follower of Mr. Eliom now, however. The protagonist interrupted him and replied that he knew about the spy. Let him tell them what was on his mind. But Milo was surprised and said that he was right. They were supposed to leave a corpse as proof of the mission, but that was no longer possible. And since he hadn't returned either, the man would think the deal had fallen through. He knew who they were, so he would easily guess where to look for them. The gate would most likely become unusable soon, even though they are the elite force of the Revolutionary Army, a group of vengeance priests, and they can break through if something happens. But it will be difficult for them if the Nok are attacked from both the front and the rear. So, although it is difficult, they will have to hurry. Besides, he is surprised that he knows that someone is working for them from the shadows. Does he know who it is? MC asked that it is the Prime Minister, Viscount Jarek Moss, right? But Milo asked if there is any reason why he suspects him. He thought that he did not expect this question. He is not trying to catch him, it is just curiosity. He needs to prove himself to him if he wants to use the group of vengeance priests for his own purposes in the future. He needs to think, Jarek is not a passing NPC. Moreover, he knows what he did. The protagonist explained that the Prime Minister was born in the Empire, but he has the blood of the Han tribe. Not long ago, this tribe and the Empire were fighting over the northwestern territories, and the Han tribe is close to the Revolutionary Army. And his daughter recently got married, right? With a native on the border, of course the Empire and the Revolutionary Army would be at war, and there would be endless skirmishes on the border. He had no choice. He had to either hate the Revolutionary Army with all his might or cooperate with them. He married his daughter off to have a connection with the Revolutionary Army and the Eliom Supreme Church. Perhaps the minister's son-in-law is an Eliom follower or a priest? The protagonist thought with a smile that this was funny. If only he could memorize the curriculum like that. But Milo was surprised that this was amazing. He was very insightful. He was completely different from what people described him as. MC thought that they were looking at him as if he had become a completely different person. No wonder, he only saw the outer part of Gilroshan, after all. In any case, the escape route is about to be cut off, and Gilroshan himself, who should have died, is still alive. According to the plot, the third prince has been dead for 4 days. The course of the game has changed due to his survival. Now Prime Minister Jarek uses the strongest card in his arsenal. The closest army near Kurdian, the capital, and Mount Lochman is a special force of knights led by their commander, Marquis Elron Reut. But Milo thoughtfully noted that in any case, they need to get rid of their pursuers and reach the gate, so let him just hold out. If they hesitate and they are surrounded, then it will be bad. MC replied that this will not do, because they cannot break through it. The High Priest asked what he is suggesting. The protagonist thought that they needed to find another way out, a path that didn't exist in the game. What would Gilroshan himself choose? But Milo noted that Lord Eolem had ordered them to be careful. The protagonist said that they would stay here for a while. Suddenly, Irgal, a comrade of the revolutionaries, came and asked that he wanted to wait for Bear and Oriol to catch up. Was he right? Was he waiting for his bodyguards to come? The protagonist worriedly wondered who he was. The guy with a serious face added that since he was silent, it meant that he had guessed correctly. If he didn't want to open his mouth, then maybe he should help him. The MC thought that he was the first to talk to him, so he should try to find out who he was. Irgal took out his sword and said, "Let him answer." His sword was already impatient. The protagonist grinned and, approaching him, asked who he thought he was. He didn't even know who he was. Why would he answer? He says his sword is impatient? Does he really think the High Priest of Bamilo will just watch? Well, he'll tell him 2 things. First, he doesn't plan on returning to the palace. Otherwise, he'd just be stalling for time instead of trying not to slow down the group of priests of retribution. Secondly, he is right. He is waiting for the Bear and the Oriol. But does he need to explain why? He does not even know him. Besides, he hates fools like him. Irgal grabbed him furiously and pointed out, "Let him know his place." They spared his life. Suddenly, MC smelled something and wondered, was it the smell of flowers? What was that even? Bamilo separated them and, introducing the guy, noted that he was not from the church, but a comrade of the revolutionaries. The protagonist thought that, as expected, he was a mercenary. In the game, the player character does not belong to a specific group. This means that the player can freely wander the world as a mercenary. He has never heard his name before. Perhaps, like him, he is from the real world. Irgal said, Let him speak now. Let him tell why he wants to wait for the bear and the aureole. The protagonist thought that these were the shadows of Prince Gilroshan, the 6th rank knight, Karl's Kilian, and the prince's mage mentor, the 7th rank witch, Thurvian Sui. Bamilo wondered why they were waiting here. Ergal exclaimed that they didn't have time for that, they needed to finish him off. The MC asked if they had heard of the commander of the Special Knight Forces, Marquis Elron. Yes or no? Let them answer? The high priest replied that of course they had. How could he not have heard of one of the 3 swordsmen of the Empire? The protagonist called out to the mercenary and asked if he could defeat him. Why was he silent? Let him answer him. If he continued, they would die by his hand. If he wanted to die, let him die alone. The protagonist thought that Marquis Elron was a 9-star character. By player standards, he was a very strong NPC, whose level was around the beginning of 19. He added that opposing the Marquis wasn't the worst choice if they wanted to disappear without even their corpses being left behind. Ergal asked excitedly, did he mean to say that the Imperial Blade was coming for them? If so, they were finished. MC thought that was unexpected. He thought that he would start arguing about whether he could be trusted. It seemed that the bastard wasn't that stupid. Bamilo asked what they should do. If Elron and his knights were really blocking the way to the gate, then even if Karl's and Thurvian came, there was nothing they could do. The protagonist looked at the mercenary and thought that, judging by his appearance, he knew. He said that there was actually a way. If they listened to him, they would break through to the gate and move to Orax. But first, he needed both of them to promise something. First, that they would keep everything he said a secret. Bamilo wondered what he was going to say that required a promise. MC interrupted him and pointed out that they would swear by the name of Eolim. The high priest agreed and replied that he swears that he will take everything the 3rd prince said to his grave with him. The protagonist continued that secondly, he needs them to do something when they move to Orax. They need to find an item. Bamilo asked what the item was. The protagonist replied with a smile that it was nothing. It was just a pair of glasses that could only be found in Orax. Even if it was just a pair of glasses, they should still swear by the name of Eolim. Karl's, whom they called Bear, was not actually Kilian. His real name was Reut. MC wondered if he was a warrior nicknamed the Sunset Knight, one of the high-ranking knights of the Empire. After the fall of the Empire, he fled to the 5 kingdoms of the north and became the commander of the Knights of the Sky. Bamilo asked in surprise, is he Elron's illegitimate son? The protagonist agreed and added that besides Elron, few people know about it. Even Karl's himself doesn't know. He looked at the mercenary and thought that he knew it. He knows about it. If Ergal, like him, is from the real world, then he could already suspect something about him. After all, the 3rd prince, who should have been dead, is still alive. The question is, how much does he know about this game? Suddenly, a powerful explosion was heard nearby. Karl's, armed with a sword, shouted, "Where is the prince? How dare they kidnap the prince? It's not too late. Let them return him and go." The priests thought that they kidnapped him, but now he follows them of his own free will. At this time, MC, heading to the scene, thought that here and there he left clues so that Karl's could follow the trail, but he came earlier than expected. If Thurvian interfered, the priests would stop holding back and start fighting to the death, so he had to hurry. At that moment, the woman herself, having started to use her ability, noted that she would not warn them anymore. Let them answer them. Where is her student? The priest shouted excitedly. Let her allow him to explain. Thurvian exclaimed furiously. Let him shut up. He dared to kidnap her student and now makes her wait. First, she would turn his people into dust, and then she would find him herself. At the last moment, the protagonist stood next to the priests and shouted, "Let them wait." Karl's, seeing him, asked in bewilderment who he was. He answered with a smile that he was Gilroshan. He shouted furiously, "How dare they treat his highness like that?" What did they do, since he had become so thin? The priests looked at each other in bewilderment and thought that they had done nothing. MC said he would explain everything to them. He was not kidnapped, or rather, kidnapped, but he was no longer a prisoner. Thurvian screamed furiously that he was a damn bastard. She had been through hell and back trying to find him, and he was talking such nonsense? Let him stand there, she would finish him off along with those bastards. The protagonist thought that he understood that the mentor would not respect the student, even if he was the crown prince, but still. The woman screamed furiously. Was he seriously going to stand there like that? Is that what she taught him? He wondered if she really was a witch and not a bandit? Or was she cursing just because she was a witch? He thought that if she were a saint, she would not curse like that. This is Thurvian, nicknamed the Scarlet Shadow, the pride of the magical empire of Walt, a native of the 5-colored tower. Rumor has it that she is an old witch, 200 years old. She manages to stay young by bathing in the blood of girls. In fact, she is not 200, but 19. There are witches who can pass on their heritage to their descendants. When passing on, the magic itself, the name, and even part of the memories are transferred. And also the appearance, because of which all sorts of rumors are spread, frightening people. Karl's put his hand on her shoulder and told her to calm down. They are not in danger, so they can at least listen to him. Thurvian immediately became embarrassed and agreed. MC thought that she is one of those who has a weakness for beautiful men. He called out to them and warned that he was going to Orax. The woman was surprised to notice that he had completely lost his mind. Carls menacingly exclaimed that this is enemy territory. With all due respect, does he not know that this is the base of the revolutionary army that has risen up against the Empire? The protagonist turned around and replied that he knows everything. And he also knows that they do not believe him. However, the path he intends to follow from now on is not a continuation of his past life as a scoundrel. He understands that it is difficult to accept, but this is his own will. Only by adhering to this path can he survive. This is the fate he has chosen for himself. Let them not stop him. This is an order. Let the teacher forgive her worthless student. She probably thinks that he has learned nothing from her, but he has not renounced magic. It is just not the time yet. One day he will definitely shine with the light of 5 colors. Thurvian thought with a serious face that he has not renounced magic. Did this bastard's eyes always shine like this? She can't even maintain eye contact, and now he says that he will shine with the 5 colors of her teachings. True magic always shines pure and bright with 5 colors. There is a saying that is passed down from generation to generation in the 5-colored tower where she studied magic. Most modern mages don't know this. So how did he know this? She thought he had no interest in magic. He had no talent, so he pretended to hate it, while secretly he clung desperately to magic. Not to mention that he only pretended to be stupid while he was in the palace. He was great at playing dumb in front of everyone. It was her fault that as his mentor, she didn't notice it herself. What had she been doing for the past 5 years? MC added that he hoped that she and Carls could go with him. The girl agreed with a calm face. He asked in surprise, did she agree so easily? Thurvian explained that she had been demoted anyway as the mentor of the worthless third prince. Wasn't it part of a mentor's job to have faith in her student who had finally come to his senses? Who knows? Maybe since he was a prince, he would make her the head of the 5-colored tower one day. He thought that Gil Roshan seemed to know what path awaited him. The only problem was Sir Carls. The sir she had come to know while tracking Gil Roshan was a complete follower of the rules. The word compromise was unknown to him. His only goal was to return the prince to the palace safely. Even if these were the words of his master, he would not listen. Surely he would say something like that. He wanted to forgive him for his insolence, but he would take him back, even if it was considered treason. At this point, Carls himself burst into tears and falling to one knee, remarked that he had not expected him to say something like that. He always believed that he would do something great. His sword, he would follow his will, his path and destiny. If anyone dared to stand in his way, he would defeat them with his sword. System windows appeared, notifying that Carls and Thurvian had joined his party. After a while, Elrond noted that a lot of time had passed. Had the search yielded nothing? The servant replied that they had found traces, but they were very good at evading pursuit. He thought nervously that Gil Roshan was no use. According to the laws of the Empire, his unfortunate youngest son, Carls, was to become a slave. After all his efforts, he managed to uncover his origins and give him to the Kilian family to be raised. He had the misfortune of becoming a guard for the wayward third prince. He was forced to follow a man everywhere, who was eventually kidnapped. The more time his son spent with Gil Roshan, the worse his reputation became. He was simply a vile spawn. His son Carls is one of the most promising talents in the Empire. At least he got out of the kidnapping incident unscathed, but as long as he remains under that bastard's command, he doesn't even know what else could happen. If he can take advantage of the situation to deal with the third prince, he can transfer Carls to the Night Squad. Elrond inquired of the warrior. Was he saying that his son and Lady Thurvian were tracking the third prince? Was it possible that they would find him first? He replied that even though she was a 7th-rank witch, her specialty in poison and flames was not suitable for tracking, so he doubted it. Elrond smirked and noted that it seemed like the heavens were on their side. Their mission was to cut off the kidnappers' escape route and eliminate them. Even though they had a hostage, they would not negotiate with them under any circumstances. They would only focus on eliminating the enemy. Was that clear to him? The warrior replied that he understood everything. The captain ordered him to leave, and thought that now the knights would not worry about the safety of the third prince. They would only concentrate on eliminating the kidnappers, even if the ground was soaked in blood. At this time, Carls called out to the protagonist and asked what he was thinking about. And what kind of sword was that? He exclaimed in fear that it scared him, and he needed that sword. The knight noted that he had lost weight. Now he looked impressive. The protagonist replied that he had walked through the mountains with those bastards. At least he hadn't died. He looked at him and wondered in surprise what had happened to him. Carls said excitedly that he had no idea what was in his heart while he was chasing him. If something had happened. The protagonist thought that in the original story, Gil Roshan and this knight were like brothers. which makes sense because they were distant relatives and had grown up together since childhood. He was not Gilroshan, but he was glad to see him here. Carl's is the leader after all. He is a talented tank who has earned the brilliant nickname the Sunset Knight. If you help him grow, he will become simply inimitable by the end of the game. That is why he needs to always have him around. And yet, just seeing him alive like this makes him feel like he has met a school friend with whom he was once good friends. Thurvian came up to them and asked if he slept well. MC thought that it was harder to befriend her, so he did not address her as often as the knight. Perhaps it was because Gilroshan's feelings remained. Carls called out to her and asked if she slept well. They talked. The girl sheepishly agreed and added that she would go wash up and then come back. The protagonist thought that he was glad to see her, but there was something painful in this. As if he owed her some kind of debt. Carls noticed that his face had grown thinner, but it was clear that he was full of energy, and this pleased him. He felt as if they had returned to the past when they were still in the boys' palace. The protagonist thought that this was like a school attended by the offspring of high-ranking aristocrats. Carls added that he was quite smart back then. All the ladies of the court loved him, and His Majesty also treasured him. MC wondered if it meant that the third prince was normal as a child. The game and the novel did not say this. The knight wondered what would have happened if magic had not been revered in their walled empire. If it had not been considered necessary basic knowledge for everyone, everything would have turned out differently, even for him. The protagonist thought that this was logical. He was the prince of a magic empire, but he had no talent for magic. People expected a lot from him. They invested so much love in him as a child that they must have been very upset when he grew up. Even if it was true that past didn't belong to him, he said with a calm face, let him not regret the past. It didn't matter what kind of child he was. No one else remembered the third prince of the boys' palace except him. They had to look at the present. What did he think about it? Carls replied with a smile that he liked his words. It sounded fantastic. The protagonist smiled and remarked that fortunately, people didn't know the original that well. The knight asked him in confusion what he meant. He replied, let him not worry about it. MC thought that now he was more confident than ever that he could handle the god forgotten by the world. Even if he was a bad character and a bully now, it wouldn't continue like this. He didn't need talent for magic. He was not an EX rank supreme mage, but an F rank gladiator slave, but he would have another opportunity in the future. He put his hand on his shoulder and told him to remember that he would return with the right to live. And when that happened, no one would dare to despise him, his friend, brother, and master. So he should hold his head up high. Carls agreed and noted that he had never lowered his head. He asked in confusion, was he a fool? The knight explained that he was joking. He should not be angry with him. After some time, the witch returned to them. MC noted that since the master was here, they needed to discuss their plans for the future. Did he tell you why he couldn't return to the palace? Carls agreed and added that there were 1 or 2 traitors there. The protagonist agreed and asked, he knew Marquis Elron, the protector of the north of the capital, right? The knight replied that yes, he was his father's friend and one of the 3 sword masters in the empire. Wait, that can't be. The protagonist said that he understood him. The Marquis is a loyal knight and martial artist for whom honor is not an empty phrase. He is not a traitor, but the problem is that he has now blocked the passage to the gate. He will try to eradicate the killer and return him to the palace. Carls asked if he wants to try to convince him to cooperate. How did he convince him and the witch? MC thoughtfully asked if he thinks it will work. What does he think in this situation? The knight replied that he does not want to disappoint him, but it is very unlikely. A group of priests of retribution will be immediately destroyed, and they will be returned to the palace with him without the right to choose. The protagonist said with a smile that he is not disappointed. Let him not worry. Carls happily asked if he really has an idea. They are both very curious. The protagonist took the sword and replied that his idea is right here. He is going to defeat the Marquis and pass by him. There is no other option. The knight approached him and asked in surprise, is he sick? He thought he was a sane man. Thurvian excitedly noted that she thought he was not quite right in the head. Could she go home? He began to touch his head and said to let him answer if he was ill. MC thought with displeasure, why were they so impatient? He nervously exclaimed, let them listen to the end of how he was going to fight him. Carls shouted furiously, how were they supposed to defeat the knight commander? Thurvian sat down on the ground and said that it was good that he showed interest in magic. But this was too much. The protagonist thought that it was obvious that they were completely underestimating him. God-Forsaken World is a game that does not heavily rely on stats rewarded for leveling up. The enemy is not an NPC that cannot be advantaged with a fate card. With good synergy, traps, and mental influence, it is possible to defeat a 9-star even with only 6 stars. The woman noted that they need to listen to what he is going to do. The protagonist thought that the problem was that he was now at 0 stars, not 6. He replied that he was going to request a noble duel and send his sword flying. It was simple, right? Carl's answered with a serious face that it was definitely impossible. The MC thought that a noble duel was the legal norm of the Walt Empire. It was a one-on-one fight based on aristocratic traditions. As the name suggests, the conditions of the fight were decided by the participants. All the rules were also discussed between them, including the observer and the victory conditions. He noted that they needed to add a rule that would make this possible. First, the knight would be an observer. Okay? Carl's asked what rule he wanted to add. If it was wonderful, the commander could refuse, and if it was dangerous for him, he would be against it. The protagonist replied that there were 3 rules that he wanted the Marquise to accept. First, fight only with swords. Second, the one who drops the sword loses. Third, you can't use shields. Carl's nervously noted that these rules wouldn't help him much. He might think that the first rule is in his favor since he has no mana, but in fact it's not so. Commander Elrond is a very strong swordsman. The second rule is that the one who drops the sword loses. The weaker side has a higher chance of dropping the sword. This is simple logic. And what about the third rule? He asked not to set conditions that could put him in danger. Didn't he? A duel is not a joke. No one will be held responsible if something happens during it, even if he is a prince. He will never become an observer under such conditions. MC replied that he shouldn't worry. His life will definitely be safe. The knight asked in confusion, why is he so sure? He pointed his finger at him and said that he should imagine that he is a swordmaster who has been training in sword fighting for 59 years. But then one day he is challenged by a newcomer, and it turns out that he is a prince and he is a marquise. How would he act if he were challenged with the above conditions? Carl's answered thoughtfully that he would find it funny and amusing. It would be difficult for him to seriously fight against a newcomer, and if the prince gets injured, it would complicate everything. Therefore, he thinks that he would get by with sending his sword flying. The protagonist agreed and added that this is why he added the condition about no shields. It will force him to be even more careful. So the Marquise will never kill him, even though he hates him to death. He thought that besides, if Carl's is an observer, he will not do anything to his master in the presence of his own son. The knight, perplexed, asked why he thinks that he hates him. The protagonist thought that they need to change the topic. He couldn't tell him that his father wanted to kill him so that he wouldn't interfere with his future. He grinned and said that he and the Marquis had an old argument. Carl's asked curiously what the argument was about. MC replied that he shouldn't think about it. He thought that he just couldn't tell it now. Thurvian called out to him and said that she had noticed that she hadn't seen any of the priests today. The protagonist explained that he had asked them for a favor. Meanwhile, the priests had caught the goblins and tied them to a tree, and then they began to argue about whose catch was bigger. Bamilo approached them and, carrying a huge carcass on his back, noted that faith requires consistency. They cried out in displeasure that it was unfair. Let him let it go. He replied that he had tried hard to catch it. So why should he let the catch go? The priest asked, what about the people the goblins had captured? Bamilo explained that he had sent them back to the village. It was Eolim's will, so he told them to be grateful. They had caught many, so he thought the preparations were finished. Let them call the prince. The priests asked which of them would call the prince. He shouted furiously, let them stop. He could become a follower, but until the archbishop confirmed it, he was still the prince of the enemy empire. Until they were sure of everything, they could not become attached to him. Bamilo called out to Urgal and asked if he was going. He agreed, and thought that he needed to learn more about Gil Roshan's plan depending on the situation. The priests were puzzled. Then, why did he catch this monster? Let him let it go. The high priest replied with displeasure that they had to stick to the plan for now. At this time, MC noted that everything was about to be ready. Would they go? Thurvian asked what all done meant. He explained with a smile that he had asked a group of priests to clear out the goblin barracks in this area. They should be done by now. The protagonist wondered what drag through meant in gamer parlance. He added that he, the third prince, would deliver the final blow. A system window appeared, explaining that this place was a hunting ground, the barracks of the dread goblins. Capable goblins live here. This area is not recommended for beginners. After some time, they set off. The protagonist explained that another advantage they had was that they knew the Marquise's weakness. Carl's replied that he knew his weakness too. His mana and swordsmanship were incompatible. Thurvian smiled and noted that she had heard about that too. They said that he was not very efficient with his mana. MC said that it was a weakness compared to other swordsmen. Right now, his right shoulder is more important. It is severely paralyzed. He thought that in the game, Marquise Elrond has an unknown wound on his shoulder. The girl asked if he was sure. She had never heard of it. Hearing the agreement, she asked where he heard about it. The protagonist hesitated and thought that he needed to come up with something convincing. He replied that he overheard a conversation between His Majesty and the commander of the Imperial Knights. Thurvian noted with a smile that then it was true. Carls happily said that if he was right, it meant that the commander would not be able to use the Vanguard sword technique, since it requires both hands. The protagonist agreed, and a system window appeared, which said that the Vanguard sword technique is a secret sword art of the Reut family, one of the most famous swordsman families in the Empire. It is an aggressive dual-blade technique that focuses on a merciless attack. Special effect: when equipped with the Reut family's special sword, the Roaring Sword, damage is increased by 20%. MC thought that the Vanguard sword technique required high-level mastery. It was this sword technique that allowed Elrond to reach 9 stars. The technique has high compatibility with his Roaring Sword. Thurvian was surprised that he could not use his own technique. Then they really had a chance. Carl said excitedly that he was still a sword master after all. He was strong enough to defeat a 7-star with one hand. Even with one hand, he had no chance against him. The protagonist was perplexed, wondering what he was talking about. Was he even on his side, or was this his way of showing loyalty? He replied with a calm face that he was right, it was a fair point. But what if he said that he knew exactly what moves he would use when he only had one hand? The knight asked in surprise. What did he even know? MC thought that there are similarities between the different sword techniques in the game. That is why even the most useless technique at first glance can be powerful depending on the purpose for which it is used. He asked with a smile, does he really think that he has no chance of making him drop his sword? The protagonist thought that the technique he will use is this. Suddenly, Irgal's voice was heard from behind the tree, saying that he should understand that this is not enough to make him drop his sword. The protagonist wondered in surprise, how long has he been here? The mercenary approached them and remarked that he doubts that he has enough strength to survive even one blow from the Marquis. Isn't he right? MC answered with a smile that it is obvious that it will be difficult for the current him. That is why he wants to get the elixir of strength, which temporarily increases strength. Irgal wondered in surprise, what is he planning to defeat the king of Mount Lochman? Even though he has a group of vengeance priests on his side, the king is a monster. He won't be able to do it. The protagonist added that he knows they are not strong enough to defeat the king. That's why they are lounging around here waiting for helpers. After a while, he came to the hunting grounds. The goblin shouted excitedly, "Let him step back. He hates humans." The protagonist, holding a sword in his hand, thought that he is a living creature. It was not like that in the game. He does not want to do this, but there is no choice. This is the only way he can survive in this world. The goblin exclaimed in fear that he does not hate humans. He loves them. He will give him meat. MC killed him and a system window appeared, notifying that his level has increased. One ability point was received. Let him open the ability tree to unlock a new ability. He thought that a warm feeling of satisfaction was spreading inside him. If you count the 2 points received at the beginning, there are now 3. A system window appeared, saying that he had used 3 points. He had learned the martial arts of the Traveler. The brutal fighting techniques were recorded by his body. He had received a 1% bonus to his strength and endurance. The protagonist thought that he needed to reach level 9 to master the sword technique required to fight the Marquis. Now he was only level 1. He had a long way to go. He had been killing goblins for some time. A system window appeared, notifying that his level had increased. He had used 4 points and mastered extreme training. He was now better able to handle unexpected situations. He had received a 1% bonus to his intelligence. After some time, Carls, seeing him, was surprised to notice that he seemed to have become different. Thurvian agreed and asked if he had taken any good elixirs while she was not looking. MC thought that all these abilities were very good. He felt like his body had become stronger. He replied that it seemed to him that something like this had always been inside him. It was a group of priests who had prepared a good thing for him. The girl asked where it was. Let him give it to her too. He replied that he had already drunk it all. Thurvian exclaimed furiously that he had not even thought about his mentor, as if he could figure it out on his own. He was just ungrateful. How does he treat his elders? The protagonist thought with a nervous smile that she was only 19 years old. Milo approached them and asked what else they could do for him. He replied that there should be more goblins here. He asked them to bring as many as they could defeat. The protagonist thought that it was no longer enough to deliver the final blow. Now he needed to hunt himself. He also needed to practice using the sword. After a while, Carls, holding the sword, exclaimed that the goblins were advancing. MC sighed and noted that 3 to 4 would have been enough. Aren't there too many of them? Thurvian, almost imperceptibly, began to help with her magic. The knight warned that he would deal with them. Let him concentrate. Suddenly one of the goblins attacked him. The protagonist parried the blow and wondered how such a short man could be so strong. And yet, he does not know if it is thanks to the gladiator slave card, but using a sword now comes naturally to him. And also, just like in the game, he sees the suggested mark for a blow at the right time. Everything is going better than he thought. He killed the goblin, and with a sly smile shouted, "Let the next one attack." During the battle, the protagonist smashed his forehead to activate the masochism preference ability. After a while, when it was already dark, Carl said with a tired look that he thought that was enough for today. Both he and the priests were exhausted. MC agreed with a smile and said that they would finish here. Maybe they should go have a nightcap? The priests happily exclaimed, thanking him. After some time, they lit a fire and began to drink alcoholic beverages. At this time, the knights hid behind the trees. One of them called out to the commander and whispered, "What will they do?" Bern-Filit, watching them, wondered in bewilderment, what the hell is going on here? Is this really the same fat third Prince Gilroshan? One of the squad members called the commander and asked what they were going to do. Maybe they should kill them all? When he didn't get an answer, he was about to call him again, but he interrupted him and said that he should wait because he was thinking. He thought that for the last couple of days, they didn't even try to cover their tracks. Today, they even lit a fire without using a concealment spell. Besides, they were also drinking alcohol. Only some of them were drinking, including the prince. It could be a trap. They were ordered to kill the kidnappers, but the prince was acting as if he hadn't been kidnapped at all. Carls and Thurvian were with him too. Maybe it wasn't a trap. He started to come out from behind a tree and a squad member asked what he was planning. The commander walked forward with a calm expression and said that they should stay put. First, they needed to figure out what was going on here. They noticed him right away and a church member asked, "Were those knights from a special unit?" Carls called him Sir Philip, and he told His Highness that he was glad to see him in good health. Gilroshan called him by the name of Bern and said, "Welcome." He said nothing to this and asked Sir Kilian, "What is going on here?" He is sure that they have an explanation. They all decided to betray the Empire? He thought, the third prince is a known bully, but isn't this too disrespectful behavior towards the imperial family? He again demanded an explanation, and Carl said that His Highness will answer his question. But first, doesn't he think it is necessary to greet the prince properly? Thurvian approached them and agreed with him. The protagonist looked at them with a joyful smile and thought that they can be relied on. Bern decided to listen to them, knelt down and said his full name and title, and said that in front of him is the vice commander and head of the special unit of knights. He let him stand up, called his allies, and asked if they could leave them alone. They immediately left, leaving them standing there, and he said that he was glad to meet them. They did not cover their tracks for several days. He is sure that he understands how absurd this is. A group of priests of vengeance were only trying to distract their pursuers. Bern looked at him with a puzzled expression and asked why he did this. MC calmly said that this was his order, because he was waiting for him. He was surprised because of this and asked if he could ask for what purpose he did this. He calmly said that firstly, he was not kidnapped. He plans to go to Orax together with a group of priests of vengeance. To do this, he needs to see his superior, Marquis Elron. He asks not to look at him like he is crazy. There is nothing wrong with him. He thought that even though he is a hooligan, there are lines that cannot be crossed. He asked with a serious expression if he understood correctly, he had just betrayed the Empire. He asked with a smile and a calm expression, did he really need to say this out loud? Shouldn't he discuss this with the Marquis? Or was he wrong? He looked away with a confused look and said that it was not so. Gilroshan looked at him with a serious expression and thought that it was great. He could not resist. He put his hand on his shoulder and said that it was already late. They would leave in the morning. But before that, he needed to go somewhere. Bern asked what he planned to do. He said with a smile that he would not do anything serious. He would just try to get rid of the annoying insect that was disturbing the inhabitants of the Empire. He also wanted to ask one more thing just in case. He wasn't planning to take advantage of the night to attack a group of vengeance priests, was he? Since he had been in the service of Commander Reut for a long time, he was sure to know the secret of Carl's birth. Bern was surprised by this and was about to ask something, but he immediately covered his mouth with his finger and said that therefore they should do without nonsense. Let this night pass peacefully. Immediately after that, he ran back, waved his hand, and said that he should look for him in the morning. He looked at him in surprise and wondered, is this really the same good-for-nothing third prince? Were the rumors false, or has he gone crazy? After some time, the protagonist stood in the middle of the forest and thought that the sword technique that Elron would use with his paralyzed arm was the Trafalgar sword technique. The system announced that this was a B-rank composite technique, a sword technique passed on to the knights of the Luxon Kingdom. It consists of fast attacks with an emphasis on defense and chain movements. Special effect can be used regardless of the type of weapon. He thought that this technique could be used with any type of weapon. For knights, a sword is like a lover, and for the Marquis, his sword is even more. His roaring sword is an ego sword, which signifies that he has his own will. The roaring sword is also the symbol of the Reut family. The Marquis will never drop his sword. The system announced that he has used 4 ability points and learned the nomadic swift sword technique. The system announced that this is a C-rank composite technique, a sword technique imbued with the vengeance of the nomads who once roamed the southern region of the continent. It is characterized by fast movements. A special effect, it seems that there is some secret connected with this technique. Now he can use normal sword techniques. He swung the sword a few times and was very impressed by what happened. He thought that the Trafalgar sword technique that the Marquis would use was a B rank, and his technique was a C rank. If we compare the ranks, it would seem that his technique would be insufficient. Dominant techniques use the weight and power of the sword to crush the enemy. Speed techniques use high speed to drive the enemy into a corner. Flow techniques reveal the enemy's weaknesses through smooth and consistent attacks. In a god-forsaken world, these 3 types of techniques are like a game of rock, paper, scissors. In other words, high-speed techniques are very effective against high-speed techniques. If you compare them, the former can level out a gap of 1 rank or more. He reread the message about the technique and thought that this is where it gets interesting. The Kingdom of Luxon is located in the far southern region and is a vassal state of the Empire. They strictly adhere to the dominant techniques and treat the neighboring nomads like slaves. Because of this, they were almost destroyed by the wrath of the nomads who had grown in strength. Even though the nomads ultimately lost, they left behind the technique of the swift sword. This technique was created for the purpose of revenge. Its only purpose is to resist the technique of the Trafalgar sword. Carls called His Highness with a smile and said that everyone is already here, so they can go. MC went to them and thought that even though this technique was C rank, it would prove its usefulness later. After that, they came to a place where priests were standing next to knights with dissatisfied faces, and he thought that he had already forgotten that they were not getting along well with each other. He looked at them and said that, so, as he said before, rather than trying to deal multiple strong blows, it was better to deal longer blows that did less damage. Did they all understand that? Bumilo agreed with him and said that they did not want to listen to the same thing for 10 minutes again. Byrne looked at him intently and also agreed with him. Gilroshan thought that they were not listening to him at all. He should have thought of this earlier, but he was planning to leave the Urgal raid. He noticed his gaze, called his name, and said that he should go with them because he doubted that they would listen to him. He agreed with him and asked Carls if he could hit him harder so that everyone could hear. He was embarrassed by this and asked His Highness if he could do this. He said with a calm expression that it was okay since it was necessary for his survival. He still couldn't bring himself to do it, but just as the protagonist was about to say something, he immediately slapped him in the face with his hand. This attracted everyone's attention, and he thought with displeasure that he could have not hit him while he was talking. He said with a serious expression that he would personally be in charge of this raid, asked them to remember that when they went inside, they must put aside their differences and follow his orders. Otherwise, none of them would get out alive. The king of Mount Lochman is very strong. He doesn't care who is from which group. If they disobey him, they will die. Byrne looked at him with a confused look, and thought that, however, he said that nothing serious awaited them. He clapped his hands and said that it seemed like it was time to finish explaining and go inside. Inside the cave they went to, a large monster with 3 eyes was lying on the bones, and it woke up immediately when it smelled them. It sat up and said that it smelled something delicious. Fresh meat came to it. Byrne watched as the monster picked up its large axe and thought that it was hard to believe that all these were human bones. How many had this monster eaten? There was no doubt about it. The monsters in the area were bringing it people. This is a real shame. He can't believe that he didn't suspect anything until things got this bad. Now, he will fight this creature together with the rebels. He tightened his grip on the sword in his hands and said that they didn't even know such a monster existed. They, the Knights of the Special Forces, bear full responsibility for everything that happened. Now they will take revenge on this monster for the civilians they ate, even if it costs them their lives. Do they understand him? All the knights behind him loudly agreed, and at his command, they ran to attack. Bumilo said with a serious expression that no matter what happened, they must take revenge. Their lord Eolim was thirsty for revenge, so they must go on the attack. Immediately after that, they all ran after the knights together. Byrne reached Gromhart first and dodged the first blow of the axe. He ran across the body of that huge monster and jumped up next to its face, then attacked with his sword, aiming for its 3rd eye. He thought that just like the 3rd prince said, its eyes wouldn't take any damage even though it seemed like a weak spot. He slashed a few more times with his sword as he fell, and loudly told the knights that they needed to break through the monster's thick skin first. They agreed and started attacking the monster's arm with their weapons. The priests also joined the battle, and they all started attacking from different directions together. Carls watched from the side and said that, as expected of the Special Forces Knights, each and every one of them was very strong. Thurvian said that it wasn't just their sword techniques, they were also as fast as the priests. MC said with a serious expression that they were technically knights, but they specialized in ambushes and assassinations. That's why the monsters still couldn't get up. He thought that they could easily pass the first phase since he had those who dealt fast damage. Their team is perfect for this phase. The problem is in the second phase, when Gromhart will stand up and say a phrase, meaning the beginning of the phase. Where is Urgal now anyway? He told the mentor that he was asking her to prepare her spell. He thought that he was not letting him analyze himself. That's why he does not like resourceful players. Due to the many hits received, the monster's eyes lit up and he called them all insects. As soon as he heard this, he immediately said loudly that they should all step back. Everyone obeyed him, and Gromhart stood up and hit the ground with his axe very hard. He loudly called the mentor, and Thurvian said that she was ready. Immediately after that, she released a powerful stream of fire. However, this was not enough to kill the monster, and he began to roar loudly. She stopped her attack and started shaking while looking at the monster running towards her, and thought that she couldn't move. Gromhart's attention was drawn to the other people who were running very fast next to him and striking him with their weapons very fast. He couldn't catch and roared loudly because of anger. Gilroshan watched this from the side and thought that they were all doing great. During the second phase, the monster's damage resistance and natural recovery speed increases. Sword attacks are useless now because of the fast recovery. He remembered that Bamilo asked earlier how it was possible that sword attacks wouldn't work. Then, what about the sword spirit? He said with a serious expression that using mana together with the sword is more useful, but it's not enough. He asked then how could they defeat him. The protagonist said with a smile that they don't have to worry about that. His magic resistance will decrease and he won't be able to recover from magic damage. His mentor is a 7th rank witch. She will start using flame magic. Once that happens, the monster will run towards her. Their job is to distract it until she finishes the spell. So instead of using sword spirit, they should spend mana to increase their speed. It's simple, right? Currently, one of the priests, who was standing far enough away from the monster, filled his body with energy and looked at it with a smile. He ran very quickly next to the monster and dealt a strong blow. He looked at the Imperial Knights with a smirk and asked, "How do they like that?" "It's a rebel sword. It hurt their honor." And 3 of them looked at it with a serious expression. Thurvian finished preparing a new spell and said that they should all retreat. However, the knights didn't listen to her and continued to attack the monster pointlessly. She became embarrassed by this, turned around and asked, what should she do? If she uses the spell, everyone who gets hit by it will suffer. MC looked displeased and wondered what they were even doing. Why were they suddenly acting like this? This was very bad. There was no way to deal magic damage to them. He called out to them loudly and asked what they were doing. They had to stop them, or they would get hurt if they didn't back down. Bamilo loudly told those soldiers that they had to back down. His men probably realized that they didn't stand a chance against the greatness of their swords. Byrne looked displeased and said that their swords were no match for them, so they had to back down. He loudly asked what they were both doing. They had to stop annoying each other. He didn't have time to finish because Gromhart threw one of the knights away with a very strong blow. The priests tried to attack the monster from behind and said that he knew it would be like this. The rebels' swords were much better. To his surprise, the monster caught him and with a sharp movement of its hand, threw him very far away. Gilroshan thought that the only thing you can't do during a raid is let your guard down. A good team only needs to follow the plan, which makes the raid a lot easier. Experienced players stay alert until the very end. They know that once the boss monster takes over, it's all over for them. It's ironic that they aren't players, and that's why they let their guard down, because they thought the fight was too easy. Even he himself had lost focus. If Gromhart goes into phase 3, they will die, and he along with them. At this rate, they will definitely be destroyed. He needs to figure out how to get out of this situation. His brain refuses to work properly. Carls put a hand on his shoulder and told His Highness that he doesn't have to worry. He is his sword and shield, right here. Moreover, the Special Forces Knights and the Priests of Vengeance are the elite when it comes to strength. They have gotten out of similar situations many times. He is glad that he has returned to his old self. However, it seems that he is trying to take on too much. If he is in trouble, he asks him to pass some of his burden on to him without hesitation. The protagonist looked at him with a worried expression and thought that he shouldn't say such things because he is asking for death. The knight who was attacked by the monster earlier survived and was sitting on the floor. Byrne came up to him and asked if he was okay. He looked up and saw the vice commander who extended his hand to him. He took his sword, took his hand with his other hand, and said that of course he was safe. He helped him up and said that this was great, they just needed to hold out a little longer. After that, he turned around with a serious expression and thought that he couldn't continue like this. The prince's strategy has two main directions. The first is to distract the monster from Lady Sui and make sure her spell hits the boss. They tried to distract him, but some were injured, and with fewer people, it is more difficult. He channeled energy into his sword and thought that the rest were exhausted. In order to avenge the civilians who lost their lives, he needed to step in and do his job. He ran towards the monster very quickly, slashed with his sword, and immediately jumped over it. As soon as he landed on the floor, he called out loudly for Thurvian. She immediately understood him and released a stream of fire at the back of that monster. The flames did not touch him because Gromhart was between them. He thought he did a great job, but at that moment he noticed something. He thought with a surprised expression, was he stepping on him and not Lady Sui? It was too late to run, he needed to block that blow. He put his sword under a very strong blow from the huge axe, but his body gave in and he started coughing up blood. Byrne fell to the ground because of that attack, watched as the monster swung for another blow, and thought that this was how it would end. It had been an honor to serve the commander all these years. At the last moment, when the monster finished his attack, Bamilo ran up to him and managed to save him. He was surprised that he was saved by a rebel, and he said that he could not thank him. Much more importantly, it seems to him that the monster began to hunt him at the moment when he began to stand out from the rest. It seems that they need to work together to compensate for those who were injured. He agreed with this plan, and they began to attack together using the spirit of the sword. They ran in different directions in time, and Thurvian attacked with fire magic. MC looked at this with a happy expression and thought that this was great. He got hit. He gave her a thumbs up and thought that he couldn't believe they did this. She looked at him with a smile and said that he should watch and learn. This is what is called magic. Gromhart started to emit a very strong energy. He noticed it and thought that this was great. They somehow managed to move on to the third phase. It seems that what happened helped them to come to their senses and start sticking to the strategy again. In the third phase, he loses physical and magical resistance, and his damage increases as his health decreases. In other words, he will attack without thinking about defense. He will target the weakest one. It will be him, because there's no one below his level. The system notified that Gromhart's demonic eye was staring at him. Gil Roshan with a serious expression said loudly that this happened, they should prepare. The monster asked with a displeased expression, how dare small insects provoke him? He will definitely kill each of them. Suddenly, someone attacked the stalactite above the monster's head, and it fell with a loud sound. He looked at what happened with a shocked expression and wondered what happened. Ergal, who killed the monster, jumped onto the stalactite that pierced the monster. The people looked at each other in surprise and asked, did they defeat him? They really did it. Bamilo turned around and said that he did a good job. Byrne, who was standing next to him, praised him in return. The protagonist, with a surprised expression, thought, is there something he doesn't know about the god-forsaken world? No one uses the ceiling since it is not visible in the game in this raid. Who is he anyway? Ergal passed by him and he asked who he was. He repeated his question and thought that it seemed like he had no choice but to reveal who he was. Surely he already understood everything if he is a player. He asked, is he a player? He turned to him with a smile and asked why he had to answer that. He didn't even know who he was. MC remembered that he had answered him the same way earlier and thought that now he knew one thing about him for sure. He knew that he was a vindictive jerk. After that, they all went further together, and he said that this was the room with Gromhart's treasure. They opened the big door, and Byrne asked if there was anything in here. Gil Roshan looked at him with a smile and asked if he couldn't see it. He looked at him with a confused look and thought if he had heard about his drinking problems, but was he seriously going to take it out of here? He asked if he was talking about drinking now. He loudly shouted at Gromhart's victims and said that they could come out now. The people that were inside peeked out from their hiding place and looked at them. They noticed Bamilo, recognized him, and said that he knew who he was. This was Eolam, the god he had told them about. He laughed at their words and said that he was not the god of vengeance, but just his pathetic servant from the great church. He came to save them on an errand. Byrne stood in front of him and said that they were the knights of the special unit. They came to save them. The captured people looked at him without joy and asked, did he say the knights of the special unit? He was telling his son that the Empire would send someone to save them. Why did they arrive so late? His son was already in the stomach of that monster. What are they proud of if they arrived so late? Do they even know how much pain he had to go through? Or what did he, his father, go through, watching his son being killed by the monster? If they came to save them, then what should he say to his dead son? He didn't need their help, they should leave here. The rest of the captured people supported him and started insulting the knights loudly and said that it was better to die than to receive help from the likes of them. Byrne looked at them with a shocked expression, and one of the knights asked why they didn't retreat. He noticed his worried look and asked if he was okay. He apologized and said that he was very sorry. The protagonist stood in front of them and said that the monster of Mount Lockman only recently became active. Usually, mountain monsters rarely attack nearby villages. He is sure that the special unit simply did not have time to notice something was wrong. He accidentally stumbled upon a group of vengeance priests with whom the knights defeated Gromhart. He promises that they will meet with the commander of the special unit to clean up the monsters at the foot of the mountain. They will do their best to help them recover from their losses. He bowed and said that he is sure that no words will allow them to survive their grief. But he sincerely apologizes for what they had to go through on behalf of the entire empire. What he did greatly surprised Byrne, who was standing nearby. The villagers stared at him and asked who he was. The knights also began to bow, and MC stated his name and said that he was the third prince of the empire. They were surprised by what they heard and said that there were rumors that all he did was drink alcohol and cause trouble all day long. The third prince bowed to the common people? If the prince himself is here, then does that mean the empire does care about them? In fact, their only enemy here was that monster. He shouldn't be so upset about losing his son. He lost his wife here too. Moreover, his child died in a natural disaster a couple of years ago. Even if he were to follow his son, would he be able to look him in the eye with pride? He knows it's hard, but they needed to keep living. He plans to collect stories while he lives to tell his family when they see each other again. He must keep living too. Gilroshan thought that there was little benefit in defeating Gromhart. He was interested in the people, not the treasures that were valuable to them. That's why this raid, it's preparation for the next event. The elixir of power, when consumed, temporarily increases strength. What's important to him is this elixir inside the monster's eye. Saving those people was not his main goal. What kind of world is this, and who is he in it? The man walked up to him, called him Highness, and said that he was asking him to raise his head. He was not what he imagined high-ranking nobles to be. How should he express himself? He felt like he was just a human like them. So he had a favor to ask of him, if he would allow it. His son's name was Holt. He knew that he was just a commoner, but could he remember his name? He started crying and told His Highness that he was begging him to do so. The protagonist took his hands and told him that he didn't have to worry, he would never forget his name. After a while, Elrond asked, did he just say that the third prince had changed? Did he leave those rebels alone in the forest? Did he get it right? Byrne agreed, and he said that it was unlike him and he didn't understand it. It was his first time meeting the third prince in person, right? He said with a serious expression that he was completely different from how the rumors described him. The survivors said that he was to become the heir to the throne. Elrond stopped him and said that he had heard enough heresy for today. He turned around abruptly and said that he had to take care of the survivors and he wanted to see him himself. That evening, MC asked him if that was why he had been hiding all this time. He felt like it was his duty to stay with him and protect him since he was his bodyguard. Carl said that he would be of no use, however. He turned to him with a smile, handed him the mug, and said that he should hold the mug since it was heavy and his shoulders hurt. He looked at him with a confused look and said that he was very mischievous. Elrond came to the tent where they were sitting, called His Highness, and said that he apologized for the wait. He looked at him and said that everything was fine. He said it would take a little time, but it dragged on. He came closer and said that he heard something incredible from the vice commander. He noticed Carl's confused face and asked, is something wrong with him? He said that he was fine. He smiled when he heard this and said that it was good news. Immediately after that, he made a very serious expression and asked, is he going to Orax, right? Gilroshan with a calm expression said that he understands his worries, but he will change his mind, and for that he needs to get there. If he decides to stop him, he asked, what will he do then? He leaned towards him with a serious expression and said that he will defeat him. Elrond did not take his words seriously and thought, is he crazy? He took a deep breath and said that even for a joke, this was too much. With all due respect to him, he is a swordmaster, but that doesn't mean much to him, since he doesn't understand swords. Only 3 knights in the entire empire have 9 stars, and he is one of them. How does he even plan to defeat him? Unfortunately, he doesn't plan on letting him go there. He plans to send him back to the palace and kill the rebels who are hiding in the forest. The protagonist said his name with a serious expression, and said that he was requesting an official duel with the head of the House of Reut. He asks him to follow him. He stood up from his chair and asked what was the matter. Did his shoulder hurt, or was he scared? Elrond chuckled at this, and with a serious expression, said that he did not know how he knew about his shoulder. But if he planned to provoke him, then he succeeded. He said his name and said that he accepted his challenge. After that, they came out of the tent and he asked His Highness what would be the rules of the duel. He looked at him with a smirk, and MC thought that there was no doubt in his voice about his own victory. Must think that he will not lose to him no matter what tricks he uses. He called Carl's, after which he immediately said that Rule 1, only swords can be used and no magic. Rule 2, no shields. The last rule is that whoever drops the sword loses. The Marquis doesn't mind these rules, does he? He agreed, and the system announced that a sudden event had appeared, a duel between aristocrats. It was necessary to defeat the opponent and declare victory. The knights began to gather around them and asked if the third prince was going to compete with the swordmaster. He had clearly lost his mind. After all, this spoiled idiot had never been beaten in his life. What else would you expect from the disgrace of the ruling family? How worthless is he? Burn stood next to them and listened to what they were saying with a displeased look. Elrond said that it was very unexpected that he prepared for the duel, and that the rules were not very indulgent to him. His assistant, Sir Philip, said that he had changed. He did not know why he decided so, but he did not believe that people are capable of changing so easily. He must know about what others say about him. All his past deeds led to the fact that now people think badly of him. But he suddenly decided to shed the label of a bad prince? Even if he really changed, it will not be so easy to change the opinion of himself. Regarding his birth and status, he did not have time to finish because Gilroshan asked with a bored look, "Does he always talk so much? Maybe he became a swordmaster because he can talk well?" He did not come here to listen to sermons, but to defeat him. Go to Orax and build a foundation for himself and his comrades to grow. It is also beneficial for him, isn't it? Anyway, better than when he dragged Carl's to drink alcohol. He thought that he himself understood that it was easier to change himself than people's opinion of the bad prince. The system notified that he had used the elixir of power. He thought that, however, when people's opinion changed, they would say that in fact, the third prince was only pretending to be stupid all this time. There was no need to discuss this anymore. It was time to start the duel. He said that they should stop talking and start the duel. Since he started talking so much, it seemed that he was wondering if he was told the truth. Then, why didn't he stop talking and check it out? Elrond said that he never thought he would hear such words from him. He thought about it. He ruined his son's future with his behavior. But now he was talking about changing? He was going to drag him into enemy territory, while he himself was drinking alcohol. But he dared to say that it was for the good? He took his sword out of its sheath, and thought that if he was not worthy of being the master of Carl's, he would not return from Orax alive. The protagonist looked at him with a worried look, and thought that his slow gait was making the situation even more tense. Maybe he had gone overboard with the provocation? Right now, he needed to concentrate only on the duel. Erlon came close enough to him and struck his sword first. He held the sword in his hand, and thought that it was close. He did not strike very fast, and he could see his weak points. But he could not get close while he was defending himself from the blows. The knights around looked at them and said that this was exactly what one would expect from the commander. He was pushing the prince back with just one swing of his sword. However, His Highness was doing better than expected. Even though he was only trying to hold out, he managed to block the commander's blows. Elrond continued to attack with an arrogant grin and asked, "His abilities are impressive, but is this the level he was bragging about?" MC worriedly parried his attacks and thought that he should hit his weak point, but he was hitting too hard, blow after blow. At this rate, he will not be able to activate the special effect of the Nomad Sword technique. What should he do in this case? Elrond continued to attack him and asked His Highness what was he thinking about. Did he not take into account who was standing in front of him right now? He kicked him back with a strong kick and asked, or did he completely forget about it? He was greatly injured by the attack, but he managed to land on his feet and thought that he should surrender right now. He looked at him with a very angry expression, but still turned around and started to leave. Carls ran up to him and asked His Highness, "Is he okay?" Gilroshan was embarrassed by what happened and thought, wasn't this a great chance to end the duel? He called his name and asked why the Marquis just left. Did he lose? He said that he hasn't lost yet. In order to lose, he needs to drop his sword. He asked, then why did he just leave? He said that it was because a Knight of Honor would not hit an opponent who fell during a duel. He also moved too far towards the audience, so he returned to the center. He asked His Highness with a serious voice, "Can he handle it right?" He looked at him and agreed with a serious expression. Carls helped him up and said that since he wanted to, he would believe in him. He said with a small smile that he must win. Before he leaves, he asks to be allowed to say one thing. The Trafalgar sword technique is indeed bright and smooth, but its style is flowing. It is not inferior in speed to his speed style technique. However, if the flow is not interrupted, then just like before, he will eventually be overwhelmed by the blows. He must remember that he needs to stop the flow before it starts. During the duel, he must only think about the opponent. The protagonist was a little embarrassed by this and thought he said that he believed in him. He patted him on the shoulder, began to return to the center of the square and thanked him for these words and said that he would win and come back. He thought that he was right. The flow should be stopped before it starts. The system indicator shows the time and place to attack. From the perspective of the people of this world, this is practically a deception. He was afraid of the approaching sword, so he could only focus on defense. The gap between the game and reality made him hesitate. The villagers he saved looked at their duel with slightly worried faces. The child loudly called out to his highness and said that he would definitely win. The other villagers also decided to support him and began to loudly say that he must show them. He can definitely do it and must be strong. MC started to feel embarrassed by their words and said that they didn't need to encourage him like that. His hand was shaking from the tension, and he thought that he didn't understand this world well yet. However, in some way, he understood it better than anyone else. Elrond stood calmly in front of him and asked, "Is he ready?" He thought that he forgot the most basic thing. He smiled and said that he was ready from the start. He was just a little nervous. He thought that if there is a strategy, then it should be followed. The Marquis looked at him and said that he should note that he is doing well since he can be relaxed. Gil-Roshan said with a small smile that from the outside it may indeed seem like he is relaxed. He thought that the nomadic swift sword technique hides a secret behind it. At the initial pumping, this technique is completely capable of countering the Marquis' Trafalgar sword. However, mastery of the technique with the speed style can be developed. The criterion for this is to strike weak points 3 times in a row. In game language, this is called a combo. Everything he has done up until now was preparation for the fight with him. The real fight will begin now. He said with a serious expression that it is now his turn. Elrond looked at him with a serious expression and thought that the distinctive red eyes were the symbol of the ruling Walt family. He met the third prince several times, but he had never seen such a look from him. Immediately after that, the protagonist ran towards him very quickly and struck him with a sword, which he easily blocked. He swung his sword, watched his movements, and said that it had already gotten better. He struck again with his sword, which was again easily blocked, and Elrond said that, however, it was still not good enough. He abruptly struck with his sword, but he managed to dodge and thought that he was a real monster. He jumped back from him a few meters and thought that after all, before he could only defend himself, he ran back to him very quickly and thought that at least now he could see the point to strike. He managed to hit the vulnerable point and thought that great, this is the first hit. Elrond looked at him with a serious expression and thought that he can't do such strikes at his level. He needs to check if this was an accident. He ran towards him very quickly and swung his sword for another attack. MC noticed this and with a surprised expression thought, when did he get there? He should calm down. His job is to hit the next point. They both started to strike many fast with their swords, and he thought that there was one more point left. He saw the captain's next strike and thought that in this position, he wouldn't be able to counterattack. He blocked his strike with his sword, but the blade cut his hand. Elrond thought that this attack would be difficult for most experienced swordsmen, but he stopped it at the perfect moment. If he had been a little late, his sword would have been at a different angle and cut off his arm. He looked at his face and wondered with a little surprise, did he smile now? Time around, Gil-Roshan stopped and he said with a smile that he finally succeeded, and this was in a fight against an old man obsessed with swords. The system notified that he had fulfilled the secret conditions for pumping the nomadic swift sword technique. The C rank was removed from this technique. The technique evolved into the S rank space sword art. He thought that the nomads who came from the eastern continent created the space sword art. In a godforsaken world, abilities from the eastern continent are rare. That means he was incredibly lucky. The system announced that he could add an effect to the technique. First, 1000 Soldier Strike. Second, Replacement Technique. Third, Unbreakable Wall. He chose the replacement technique and thought that this technique allows him to swap things around so he can use the enemy's strength against him. The effect of the Elixir of Power is about to end. It will be difficult to defeat him with just the evolved technique. In addition, there is also the power of the two-handed roaring sword, and the power of the 9 stars that the commander possesses. What if he uses the power of a monster against him? Even if his opponent is a sword master, he can disarm him since he does not use mana. The problem is that the effect of the elixir will end very soon. Elrond does not fight seriously. In order to use the monster's power, he must force the monster to take him seriously. The system announced that the game has been resumed. He used the first form of space sword art and pushed him away. Immediately after that, the two of them started to strike quickly. The knights who were watching the action began to take him more seriously and said that His Highness's strikes had become faster. Even if he had a one-handed sword, he still needed to have enough strength to control it quickly. Was he hiding his abilities? What was the point of that? Byrne, with a slightly surprised expression, thought that at this rate, the commander might lose. The other knight was indignant at this, grabbed him by the collar and asked, "Is he still called a Special Forces knight?" After all, the commander hadn't started fighting seriously yet. He was a swordmaster and the secret blade of the Empire. He continued to watch the fight with a slightly worried look and said that he understood it, so he could calm down. Elrond struck several quickly with his sword and said that it was quite interesting. He knew about his shoulder and Karl's. Moreover, he had learned a technique from the Eastern continent that countered the technique of the Trafalgar sword. Sir Fellet noted that he had changed and he acknowledged it. However, even if he had changed or been reborn, he would not allow Karl's to be taken to Orax. The protagonist thought with a serious expression that now was not the time. He was too reserved for now. This was not enough, and the elixir would soon wear off. He did not have time to force Elrond to fight him seriously. Unfortunately, he had no choice but to provoke his rage. He said that this was the first time he had stated his position. Was he really that against the idea of taking Karl's? He was like a precious brother to him. He was not going to put him in danger. Or rather, he was more valuable to him because they had grown up together than to him, his father. Karl's wanted to go to Orax with him, so why was he against it? Did he have the right to act like a father? He was a little surprised that he had remained silent and thought that this was not the reaction he had expected. In the original story, the commander was a model knight who followed the rules, had leadership skills, and was patriotic. He killed two types of players. The first type was those who attacked him, and the second type was those who spoke ill of Karl's, regardless of how close he was to them. You might think he was holding back since he was a prince, but the only way to affect him emotionally was to talk about his son. He had to attack him like an angry bull. Maybe he was close to his character? Elrond took a deep breath and said that he didn't understand why he was saying something he didn't know. MC noticed the powerful energy coming from him and thought that he seemed to have succeeded. He said with a serious expression that he wanted to leave him with his head on his shoulders since Karl's was watching. But when he lost to him today, he would no longer be alive. He asked loudly with an indignant and worried voice, "How dare he? They may be dueling, but he is a prince. Does he seriously think that His Majesty will turn a blind eye to this?" He thought that he knew that his character was a good actor, but did he really inherit that trait? Elrond ran up to him very quickly, swung his sword and asked if His Majesty was worried about him. Would they have kidnapped him? He admits that his sword skill is hard to resist. Gilroshan tried to attack him, but he dodged and said that however, the sword's speed is useless against him. After all, the gap in experience between them is too great. With this, he bids farewell to the third prince. But contrary to his expectations, Gilroshan knocked the sword out of his hands, leaving him confused and his subordinates in shock. Karl's lips twitched as he happily announced the prince's victory, and everyone started hugging each other, and a joyful cry arose. Thurvian raised her hands and praised Gilroshan, and the system informed MC that the buff effect had ended. Elrond Roit meanwhile wondered what kind of move that was. It was as if he had anticipated his move. Judging by the way he was smiling when he appeared behind him, it was all planned out in advance. Gilroshan approached him and extended his hand to him, saying that he had won. But the man was in no hurry to extend his hand in return, and he asked why he didn't want to admit it. He wasn't going to deny the result, was he? What he had said earlier was just to provoke him. The man meanwhile smirked and thought that Sir Fellet was right. The third prince had completely changed. Now with someone like him, maybe even Karl's. After that, he knelt before him and declared that he, the head of the Roit house, admits defeat. It was an honor for him to duel him, for which he is grateful. After that, the system reported the end of the sudden event, Duel of the Nobles. He defeated his opponent Elrond Roit. But his subordinates did not want to accept his victory so easily and told the commander that there was some kind of mistake. The condition of not using magic was absurd from the beginning, so the duel is invalid. Their commander raised his sword and said that everything was fair. His Highness offered the conditions, and he accepted them. He dropped his sword, and he held on to his. He threateningly pointed the sword towards them and asked, "Do they want to become knights who are unable to accept the result?" In their opinion, knights should be like this? They felt ashamed and bowed their heads, saying that this is not what they meant, and MC realized that he can be relied on. To be honest, he was a little scared. Without conditions, he would have broken his sword with his bare hands. It seems that Elrond Roit does not recognize him as Karl's master. His words about the gap in experience were true. Even in the game, he lost to him countless times. Loud footsteps were heard behind him. Thurvian hugged him from behind and happily exclaimed to him that he was indeed her student. He did an excellent job. Carls also did not keep him waiting and ran up to His Highness, asking how he felt, and the prince's mentor, pointing to the sky, said that now she was sure that she was closer to the place of the head of the magic tower. Gilroshan looked at her with a smile and told his knight that she would strangle him so soon, and then Elron Roit came up to him to talk. Seeing his smile, MC felt uneasy. He was not used to this yet. They retreated to a quiet place, and the man informed him that he had ordered his assistant, Sir Byrne Fillet, to bring the priests. Of course they would not be harmed. Since he had won, as promised, he would not oppose his will, but he had 3 questions. He was still the commander of the Knight of this country, even during the truce. Orax was enemy territory. What did he intend to do there? He had been there on secret missions in his youth, so it was a very dangerous place. Gilroshan confidently said that he knew enough about Orax. This city was the complete opposite of the imperial capital, Kirshin. It was chaos and wilds, and thieves roamed freely. It was unthinkable that someone would openly sell such dangerous goods in Kirshin. Life and death itself were traded on the black market. The entire city was mired in unrest, and yet people lived there. The Marquis pointed out that they were not from the ruling family like him, and he responded that he still knew a lot about them. There were 6 armed groups there, including 2 churches. They were all united by the leader of the Revolutionary Army. As soon as he was about to say the leader's name, the Marquis became noticeably nervous and told him to shut up. That name should not be voiced so madly. Even saying the name of the leader of the Revolutionary Army is considered a serious crime in the Empire. MC told him not to worry about his safety. Everything was planned. He was not going to join the Revolutionary Army, otherwise he would have gone alone. However, there was a unique opportunity in Orax, so great that the prince could change everything without anything. He asked, "Is he talking about the lair of the dead dragons?" He smiled and confirmed it. He plans to control a dragon. He remembered that in the Blue Mountains surrounding Orax, there is a dungeon called the Lair of the Dead Dragons. It is a labyrinth where dragon eggs thrown there by the dragons themselves fall. Other races are strictly forbidden to enter there, but if you complete a special task given there, you can literally control the dragon. When the Marquis found out where he was going, he shook his head worriedly and asked him to be reasonable. Not only was the probability extremely low, but the danger was also too great. MC agreed with him about that, but wasn't the desire to defeat him already so unreasonable? Defeat him, go to Orax and go to the Lair of Dead Dragons. This is the path he chose for himself. So let him not worry and ask his next question. Then the Marquis asked what he should tell the Emperor. As soon as he goes there, he will have to give him a report. He can't reveal the truth, can he? As soon as he started talking about it, Gilroshan's face immediately changed. He didn't even think about that psycho. Character Barisan Carlo de Walt is the 44th Emperor of the magical Walt Empire. A cruel tyrant, but a brilliant and frightening emperor. He is the father of the 3rd prince, and one of the strongest people in the world. In short, he is a psychopath. He asked the Marquis to tell him that he had become a believer, and he rubbed his chin in confusion, asking, surely he wasn't talking about true believer syndrome? True believer syndrome is a condition that occurs in some people who haven't studied magic, but have experienced a deep shock. They gain the ability to predict. However, believers pay a price for it. Their physical and mental health deteriorates until they die. MC looked away and nervously said that he wouldn't answer that question and thought that he actually wanted to use it as an excuse. Considering his situation, it would justify him having knowledge that no one else possesses. However, that wouldn't be enough. He told the man to tell the Emperor that he had gone to steal the Tear of Dawn. That imperial relic was in the hands of the leader of the Revolutionary Army. If His Majesty accepted that reason, he would start a war himself to get it back. He added that this should be enough, so he would probably leave him alone. What was the 3rd question? Elron Roit looked down and said that it was not really a question, but a request. Could he please set out tomorrow, so that he could rest, eat, and get treatment? Gilroshan realized that it was because of Carl's and agreed to fulfill his request, after which he went to rest. He and his friends spent a wonderful evening by the fire, laughing and chatting for a long time. At one point, Byrne declared that Bamillo was now his older brother. Whether he was under the influence of alcohol or the atmosphere, but the next morning they both felt awkward around each other. The prince wondered what was wrong with them, but did not dwell on it, and Carl said that he was a little worried. Thurvian was worried too. She did not yet understand if he was doing the right thing. After that, the Marquis approached them, informing His Highness that the preparations were complete, and asked him to be careful. He still doesn't know him well, but he is interested in him. But he would like to know more about what he really is. He looked at Carls and asked him to take care of him, to which Gilroshan agreed with a smile, after which they all set off on their way to Orax. Soon they were there, and MC looked around in surprise, and the system reported that the quest, Survive the Crisis, was completed. He remembered that this was the same quest he received when he first came to this world. saving Gilroshan and escaping from the Empire never happened in the game itself. He is now wondering what the reward will be. For completing this quest, he received 30 gold coins, a set of equipment for a novice traveler, access to the service magic inventory, and 1 guaranteed issuance of a D-rank fate card. He was very surprised by the last reward, even if the card was of a low rank, but the reward was generous, considering that this was the early part of the scenario. Now he was level 9. When he reached level 10, he would be able to choose a card for the second time. Of course, he did not know what he would get, but an extra card, even of such a rank, would give him a huge advantage. He could tear up the cards he did not need and use them to add experience to the others. The gladiator slave would be the first in line. Now he would hope that he would get the archmage again. He was distracted from his thoughts by a loud cry from the commander of the local guard, who ordered his men to arrest them immediately. MC immediately realized that this was a special unit of Titan. Carls glanced sideways at His Highness in confusion, and he asked, did he remember what he told them before setting off? Whatever happened, they must not act hastily. First, they must be completely sure that a fight could be avoided. This was not Imperial territory. If they made a mistake, no aristocratic power would protect them. Orax was a city of criminals screaming about revolution, and yet he was tied up again. The guard put his hand on his shoulder and said that it was a wise decision not to resist. Of course, there was no other choice. The third prince of the empire would soon become an apostle of Eolim? This was complete nonsense. Do they think they would fall for such stupid explanations? He chuckled and said that this was to be expected from a worthless prince, and he thought with irritation, what was wrong with this old man? The man whispered that if he was not an apostle of Eolim, then he should not even try to deceive the archbishop. He turned to him. It was Bamilo, which Gilroshan was somewhat surprised at. Thurvian, who was being held by several men, began to struggle in their grip and exclaimed, how could he do this to them? He is just an ungrateful scoundrel. After that, MC was taken to the archbishop. She finished all her business and took off her glasses, welcoming him to Orax with a smile. He noted with displeasure that it was a rather aggressive greeting. Is this what Eolim teaches? He refrained from retaliating against her subordinates who wanted to cut off his head, and even returned them unharmed. So why is he being treated like this? She only smiled in response, and he thought, so this is how she wants to play? Bamilo is an experienced assassin. While he was dealing with the Marquis, he must have been informed about him, perhaps through carrier pigeons or something. There was enough time to come up with a plan regarding him. The character Hendel is the Archbishop of the High Church of Eolim, connected with the Revolutionary Army. She once almost reached 9 stars, but was forced to leave the front lines after receiving serious wounds in battle. Despite her friendly appearance, she is a cold, calculating, and strict commander. As the Archbishop of the God of Vengeance, Eolim, her hatred for the Empire grew fiercely. She clearly wants to use him to strike back at the Empire. Now she remains silent, putting pressure on him to confess. He admitted to her that he had been parodying their god, and she said with a hint of irritation that despite his intentions, admitting it would not change anything. He said that it was now clear to him why the Imperial Minister was panicking over the leak of information. In his place, he would have fled in panic too, that they would come for him. The woman smirked and said that she had no idea he knew so much, that it was so charming. He said that he was not interested in any of it. Thanks to them, he was forced to fight Marquise Elron Reut. She probably knew what it was like to fight a swordmaster. And of course, he had won. That was the big difference between them. Hendel's hand trembled and her gaze turned cold. Gilroshan convinced himself that he didn't need to be afraid, he would simply reveal his cards. He said that if she wanted to kill him, then go ahead. It wouldn't be difficult for her. He would guarantee that she would regret it. There was one more thing. Without him, none of them could stop that disaster. In 10 days, an unstoppable disaster would hit this city, and countless people would die. Everyone here would be plunged into sorrow. Hendel smiled and asked what disaster he was talking about. He was talking about an earthquake? They had a high church and a great cathedral where the gods could descend directly. Small cataclysms could be countered with the power of gods. He said that as an archbishop, she should know better than anyone that divine power was not omnipotent. He suggests starting with freeing him. That would be a natural and justifiable first step. She agreed that there was a natural and justifiable sequence of actions in every situation, and then she stood up from the table and ordered her subordinates to take the prince and take him to the underground dungeon. She left, leaving him confused, and the believers entered the room. MC was shocked. Everything turned out completely differently than he expected. After that, he was taken to the dungeon. Thurvian and Carls jumped up at the sight of him and asked how everything went. He smiled back at them, and then the door slammed behind him, showing how things were, which made them feel uneasy. After that, Carls told His Highness that Bamilo had visited them and even made sure that they were fed. Thurvian added that he also told how things were currently in Orax. The knight assumed that he was probably explaining how the conflict between the associations works, and she asked how he knew that. He said that according to Bamilo, the Kishiri Cathedral and the Special Unit Titan are monitoring the Supreme Church of Eolim. He turned to the prince, and with a worried face, said that they said he was an enemy and must be executed or exiled. The Revolutionary Army Association has 6 armies. They are with the one whose symbol is a snake. Opposite it is the Kishiri Cathedral, with the symbol of a fox. The border and city guards who protect the occupied territory and the elite unit of the First Corps. And the last one is Titan, a special unit under the leader. They are all integral parts of the Revolutionary Army with their own roles. However, the leader, equivalent to the emperor, is not around. Perhaps everyone disagreed about his participation. He asked Carls if Bamilo had told him anything else, and he admitted that he had not told him everything so as not to hurt his feelings. He said that there are many smart people like him, so he should stop pretending to be special, because that is what will sink to the bottom and get buried underground. Thurvian couldn't help but agree with him, and Gilroshan called out to her indignantly, after which she excitedly waved her hands, justifying herself by saying that she just didn't know what to say. MC suddenly laughed, and Carls became worried about him, and his mentor told him to pull himself together. If she met Bamilo again, she would tell him everything. Gilroshan said that everything was fine, that's not why he laughed, but from what Bamilo said, he literally told him to go underground and run. He noticed a suspicious brick under the mentor's foot and asked her to lift her leg, so they discovered a secret passage leading to the catacombs. They looked into the hole and MC thoughtfully noted that it didn't seem to be deep there. He looked at the knight and told him to go first with a smile, which made him nervous and asked why him. Gilroshan raised one eyebrow in confusion and asked what if there was danger lurking below. He shouldn't act like an amateur. He got very nervous and exclaimed that it was just a hole. What other danger could there be? Moreover, he was afraid of spiders. After his confession, MC was surprised. He didn't know that about him. Then there was another option. He looked at his mentor, which made her nervous, and then exclaimed indignantly, "Does he really want his old and weak mentor to climb into this fool first?" He sighed heavily, and thought that everything was different in the game. After a few minutes of bickering, they finally jumped into the catacombs, where Bamilo and Hendel were waiting for them, and landed with a crash on the boxes. Thurvian had the softest landing, falling straight into the knight's arms. He looked at the pair with displeasure, and ordered them to stand up already, whereupon the archbishop stepped forward and remarked that they had come quickly, just as High Priest Bamilo had said. Gilroshan asked with displeasure if they really had to go through this just to meet again. She pulled down her hood and said with a smile that she was sure he knew the reason, and he thought she was right. Even Bamilo thought highly of him. He was not the type to help him escape from prison, just out of the kindness of his heart. The other groups were watching the archbishop's handling of the situation, so some degree of theatricality was probably necessary. Hendel said that she was there unofficially, but decided to trust him. At that moment, the system gave him a new task. You are the fugitive, and I am the archbishop. Even though the internal conflict within the Revolutionary Army Command has not yet been resolved, the archbishop has a favor to ask of him. This quest is special. It has a connection with the others. As a reward, he might receive permission to travel to Orax and 3 additional items. He was slightly surprised and thought that this quest was supposed to appear only after he and the archbishop became friends, and it just popped up. He said that he was their enemy and even went so far as to pretend to be their god. Why does she want to trust him? She told him that it was because of the disaster he mentioned. To be honest, their church is expecting something like this. MC didn't know that they were expecting this, and Hendel, suddenly throwing a dagger at them, said that someone from the Revolutionary Army was involved in this conspiracy, and there was a rat among them. Her dagger hit a rat running past, and Gilroshan, looking at it nervously, asked where she got such information. She responded with a smile and told him to think about it himself, and he realized that this lady scared him. Hendel said that their god does not prevent disasters, but only points them out. He is also the god of vengeance. He asked if she meant that the information was incomplete. She told him that all they knew was that the target of this disaster was the children of Orax, and that the beasts behind this were among their own revolutionary army. They were doing their best to find the culprit, but since he was among them, their every move was visible and it irritated her. MC agreed with her and thought that he had never even thought of such a thing. So that was what was behind this event. He said that since she trusted them, he would share what he knew. In about 10 days, the Kishiri Cathedral would target the children. Do they know about the Scarlet Wind Squad, a traditional coming-of-age ceremony in Orax? When all the children gathered, that would be what would happen. In the game, this event was called the Dying Suns. One of the priestesses of the Kishiri Cathedral came up with a terrible idea to revive the Kishiri Order. To do this, she plans to kill all the boys in the city between the ages of 17 and 19, right during the ritual of the Scarlet Wind. If this catastrophe is not prevented, the ritual will end in screams and horror. But Milo looked at the Archbishop with concern and said that now everything fits together. Carls wondered how the prince even knew about this, and Thurvian said that killing the children of his own country for the sake of developing his union is some kind of nonsense. Gilrosham said that all the children of Orax will choose which organization to join after the ceremony. They can decide whether to become priests, soldiers, merchants, or someone else. However, the Kashiri order does not allow men. But Milo agreed with him. They take either women or eunuchs as their servants. That is why boys will never get into this order. Carls was horrified, and Thurvian noted that they were considering the boys as a potential resource for other associations. The knight exclaimed that this was simply madness. What the hell was going on there? Thurvian was also outraged. Even though they were from another association, they were also part of the Revolutionary Army. Hendel confirmed this, and said that despite this, they had crossed the line. She had no idea how the prince knew about this, but it seemed they did the right thing by releasing them from prison. She came closer to him and bowed and asked him for help, so that their children would not become victims of the adults' intricacies. The system gave him the quest, Savior of Sons. He needs to prevent the plan of the Kashiri Cathedral and protect the children. This quest is related to the quest, You Are a Fugitive, and I Am an Archbishop. MC immediately agreed to her request but said that there was a catch. He smirked and said that when they tied him up that time, it hurt a lot. If all goes well, could he ask her to add 50 gold to the reward? Gilroshan's companions felt ashamed of him, and the Archbishop said that she heard that he spends money like water. He smiled and said that for them it was probably not much, but after all, we are talking about saving children. He is sure that she will not refuse him. The system reported that he made a deal with a friendly NPC. 50 gold coins were added to the expected reward for the quest. He acquired a new title, Novice Negotiator. After this conversation, they got out onto the streets of the city through the hatch, and Bamilo said that they did a good job, and it was time for him to go. He was about to go back to the catacombs, but MC stopped him and he asked what was going on. The principal smirked and asked, he knows why he was stopped, right? It upsets him a little. Bamilo was getting very nervous. He realized that things were bad. Now he would cheat him too. He decided to run away quickly, but Gilroshan grabbed him by the shoulder and told him not to leave so soon. He had not finished speaking yet. The man was surprised that he managed to approach him so quickly, and MC said that he knew that he remembered everything. Why was he pretending? He pretended not to understand what he was talking about, and he said that it was strange. He clearly remembered the high priest who swore by the name of Eolim that he would bring him anything if he helped him get out of the empire safely. So who was that high priest? Bamilo said that he was something special when it came to collecting taxes. He would have made an excellent moneylender. He laughed and said that he felt a little awkward. It was an unexpected compliment. Carls looked at Thurvian and said that he had a strange feeling, like they were doing something wrong. She told him that they were just making sure Bamilo didn't escape, and he reminded the prince that he had already said before that he wouldn't be able to get what was in the god's realm. He smiled back and told him not to worry. He didn't need anything like that. Let him bring him Valakas's glasses. Bamilo didn't even understand at first if he was serious, and the prince said with a smile that he knew that he could definitely do something like that. The man got nervous and thought, does he even understand what nonsense he was talking about? He asked if he knew who these glasses belonged to, and he asked back, doesn't he know himself? They belong to the head of the Revolutionary Army. These glasses were created by demons. They allow the owner to easily track the trajectory of projectiles when fired. These glasses are lying around in the office, so all he can do is take them. He patted him on the shoulder and told him not to worry. He didn't want to cause trouble for him. The head of the Revolutionary Army would be gone, and he would avoid trouble. Bamilo felt uneasy and thought that he just didn't understand what the problem was. He was sweating from nerves and asked, did he remember that he was connected with the Revolutionary Army? How dare he steal from the head? At that very moment, some bandits appeared in the alley, and their leader, named Thompson, said that they had never seen them here before. They were unlucky that no one had told them that they had to pay to enter here. He ordered the boy and the old man to give them everything they had, or they would not leave here alive, and Gilroshan smiled nervously, thinking that he didn't know who these guys were, but he already felt sorry for them. Bamilo was impatient with those who did not cooperate with him. The bandit began to get on Bamilo's nerves, and eventually he could not stand it any longer, and the veins on his face bulged with anger. He was about to deal with them, and took out his sword, but MC took it from him, and asked him to leave them with him. He told him that he could deal with them himself, and then he shouted that now was not the time for arguments. Let him think about the children. Bamilo did not understand why he was acting like this and told him that it was too much, and he assured him that he could handle it. Let him not worry and just leave. They would meet when he got Valakas's glasses. and let him remember that all this was for the sake of the children. Seeing his smile, Bamila was perplexed. He thought that he was joking about these glasses. After that, he left, and Thompson shouted after him. Where was he going? Let him stand still. But of course, he did not listen to them, and he said that it was stupid. The old man was lucky to escape from the trio of bosses of these streets without losses. He turned to his comrades and asked each one if he was telling the truth, while Gil Roshan was thinking, who are these guys? What are these 3 street bosses? He doesn't remember any NPCs like that. He said that he thought they were the lucky ones, he saved them, so they should be grateful. Thompson smirked and said that of course they would be grateful. He would give them what they couldn't take from the old man. He asked his comrades for confirmation again, while Carls rushed to his highness and called out to him, asking if he was okay. He asked him not to call him that after escaping from prison, and Thervian took out her staff and asked if she should deal with them. Thompson sighed heavily and said that he knew he had allies. But how would they help him? He was starting to get angry. He ordered his guys to capture them. And Carls stepped forward, telling his highness that he would deal with them. He swung his sword several times, breaking the weapon of one of the bandits and hitting the second one in the neck. He immediately fell unconscious, and MC looked at him with displeasure, thinking, isn't this too much? What about his experience points? Meanwhile, Carls went to the next bandit, and MC sternly ordered him to stop. He immediately stopped and turned to him, asking what was the matter. He said that he would deal with him himself, but the knight did not want to put his prince in danger and blocked his path with his sword, asking him to stay away. As his knight, he is obliged to protect him. He did not just talk about dividing the burden. He still did nothing for him. He could not prevent his kidnapping. He could not be useful. He does not want to become a burden to him. He was visibly upset, and Gil Roshan thought in surprise that he must be sad, since he was not useful during the fight. And he constantly ridiculed him for it. How should he tell him that he just needed experience points to level up? Carls turned to him and said confidently that he wanted to follow him as his sword, so let him deal with them. When he turned around to teach the bandits a lesson, he found that they were gone. They were running away in panic, but were caught by fire magic, and a hot stream blocked their path. Thervian smiled and said that they would not be able to escape by starting a fight. She would burn them alive if they did not stop. Thompson exclaimed indignantly that they had not even done anything. She chuckled and said that she did not think so. Let them run if they did not want to be burned alive. After that, she turned to the knight and asked why he did not let his highness fight on his own. He did not understand why this was necessary at all, and she said that Gil Roshan must learn to defend himself. They would not always be able to help him. The palace and even the territory of the empire were not safe. He agreed with her and asked, but would they not always be by his side? She said that of course they would be by his side. She planned to work for the good of Gil Roshan all her life, and she was sure that he would too. However, they were only men. The prince had chosen a difficult path, and there was no guarantee that none of them would die along the way. What if Gil Roshan did not have the strength to defend himself? He would need them in the future, but this was far from the only way to help. She is sure, that is why he called them with him. They need to let him fight on his own. Isn't that how loyalty is shown? Carls was surprised. He did not know that such a way to show loyalty existed, and admitted that he was wrong. After that, MC successfully defeated the 2 remaining bullies, and Thompson begged them on his knees for forgiveness. Thervian healed Gil Roshan, who was out of breath from the fight, and they both praised him, and he thought that this was nothing compared to Eolim. But 2 of them attacked him at once with all their might. He must become a better man if he wants to survive in this world. Carls asked what he intended to do with them, and Thompson, bowing his head, again asked for mercy and said that they had learned their lesson. MC thought that they can't let these guys go. It is because of people like them that there is chaos in Orax. If they let them go, they will gather more people and come back for revenge. He grinned nastily and asked, did they hear what that guy called him? He pointed his sword at them and said that he was the prince of these streets. He came here on the orders of the emperor. They think he is so merciful that he will let them live? He swung his sword. The blow hit the shoulder of the huge guy behind Thompson, and he howled loudly in pain. Carls called out to him worriedly, and Thervian asked, does he have to kill him? This is too cruel. MC smiled nervously and wondered why they were even against this idea. The blood was flowing more than he thought. Did he pass out when he saw this? He remembered the bleeding skill. He thought this skill was useless, but it came in handy. Now, the hooligans on the street are afraid of him. Thompson folded his hands in prayer and asked him for mercy, promising that he would do whatever he wanted, as long as he spared him. Gil Roshan asked his name, and then, with a big smile on his face, said that he liked his enthusiasm. From now on, he will work for him. The guy didn't understand what he meant, and asked, does he want him to work for the prince? MC was confused by his question and said that he wanted to get somewhere and he needed him to take him there. The guy again didn't understand what he meant, and he said that he was talking about back alleys. He thinks he would ask him to take him to the museum? They don't have much time. They need to go already. Thompson began to hesitate. He turned around to check on his friends, and Gil Roshan said that they were okay. After which they left. The guy led them down an alley, and MC, eating his sandwich, said that it was really delicious. Where did he buy it? He answered with a smile that his mother made it. She cooks very well. She is one of the best sorceresses of Orax. After hearing who made it, he started beating the guy with the same sandwich and asked, his mother made such a masterpiece, and that's all he can say? He doesn't even have a mother who could cook something like that. His allies were very surprised by this news. After all, the Empress was not dead yet, and he realized that he said too much. While he was explaining himself to them, Thompson thought, first the Emperor, then the Empress? This situation is quite complicated. He will not last long in such company. He pointed to the exit of the alley and told Gil Roshan to go there. There is an entrance to the black market he was looking for. He does not mind if he leaves them, right? MC asked, what is he talking about? He thinks he did not know how to get into the black market. He deliberately took him to lead them there. But he can't enter without an invitation, right? He decided to establish rules. Inside they are all not allowed to call him His Highness, that is, not to reveal his identity as a prince. After that, he waved the sandwich, told Thompson to take them there, and he said that only big shots can invite others. They will just be beaten to death at the entrance. He told him that the status of a member of the Trinity of the boss of the streets should be enough. Let him not worry. He will not let anyone hurt him. Let him just open the door and go inside with them. After that, they came to the entrance to the black market, and Thompson quietly knocked on the door, which made Thurvian ask why he knocked so weakly. Did he really not eat well today? He nervously said that no one opens for them. Maybe they should come later? Gil Roshan got tired of his cowardice, and he punched the door with all his might, which made the guy very nervous, and said that they will have huge problems. After that, the viewing window in the door opened, and a menacing man asked who was there. Thompson told him his name and called him the boss, but the man did not remember anyone with that name, and he told him that he was a hoodlum from the West Street. He brought customers here. The man asked, so he was that little hoodlum, Thompson? He confirmed it, and the door immediately swung open. A huge man appeared in the passage and threateningly approached him, asking discontentedly, do snot-nosed kids have no fear these days? He knocked as if it were his own home. So he also brought in who knows who. He imagines himself to be the most important. Has he completely lost his mind? Who taught him this? He looked down in fear and began to deny everything. An MC intervened in the conversation. He turned to the man and said that if customers came to them, shouldn't he invite them instead of scolding him? Or do they not want to make money? The man noticed their shabby clothes and generally some kind of beaten look, and told Thompson to answer the question. Who taught him this? He's completely hopeless. Then Gil Roshan handed him a bag with 30 gold and asked if they could enter by paying that much. The man was a little taken aback, and MC said that he could even count all the money, and then thought that he had received a reward of 30 gold when he came here. Now that's all he had. 30 gold is a small amount on the black market, but as an entrance fee it was a lot. Realizing that they were indeed customers, the man immediately became friendly and told him to put the money away. They did not charge an entrance fee. He had to make sure that they were worthy customers. He asked, so they could enter? He confirmed it with a smile, and Gil Roshan wondered if he really thought he was weak. Smiling, he said that he would like Thompson to take him inside. He wouldn't mind, would he? The guy became nervous, and his boss came up behind him and put his hands on his shoulders, asking him to take care of their customers. After that, he invited them inside and welcomed them to the black market. A passage down below, covered in smoke, opened up in front of them. When they went down, Thurvian said in surprise that she didn't expect such a place to be hidden behind the door. Carls looked around and noticed that it looked like an ant colony. After that, he asked where they wanted to go, and MC asked if it wasn't obvious. They had arrived at the black market, so he wanted to visit the top floor. He pointed his finger up and asked Thompson to take them there. And he nervously told him that as he already understood, he was just a bully. He didn't even know how to get there. He told him not to worry, and at that moment, Thurvian rushed forward and turned to her student, asking why he was standing there. They needed to go. She would find the passage. Her eyes sparkled with delight, and she asked them to hurry, because Mana was calling her. He mentally noted that this witch was crazy about magic items. After that, they ran after the woman and overcame several corridors. They ran past the exhibition of twin ogres, huge floating eyes in an aquarium, and then climbed the stairs to a huge door. All this time, Thurvian was very energetic. She was eager to find the source of incredibly strong mana. Gil Roshan asked her to calm down. They came here to stop the disaster. She remembers that, right? Because of his words, she finally came to her senses and said with a frustrated look that she understood everything. But when he said that they would buy a magic item for her here, she was very happy and asked if it was true. He confirmed it and said that he was sorry that she got so angry last time. He smiled and thought that, although she acted too mature, sometimes her behavior was like that of a 19-year-old girl. Because of this, she started to rush them, otherwise someone would beat her to it, and he thought, shouldn't she be touched by his generosity? He smiled nervously and told her that they should be quieter. If things didn't go as planned because of her excitement, then they wouldn't be able to buy the magic item. She looked down in horror, and he told her not to be upset and to just calm down. After that, she literally pulled herself together in a second, which surprised him, and then she smiled and said that she was completely calm now. Meanwhile, the Emperor received the report, and judging by his expression, he was not very pleased and asked the Marquis to repeat everything again. He told him that the third prince left the revolutionary army, claiming that he could bring back the Tear of Dawn. The Emperor chuckled and asked, "What kind of nonsense is this? It sounds like this brat went to fulfill some sacred imperial duty." The Marquis said that, however, it is true. The third prince went alone to retrieve the greatest treasure of the empire. The Emperor could not help but laugh loudly at his words, and a tense atmosphere reigned in the hall, which made everyone present feel uneasy. When he finally calmed down, he pointed his finger at the Marquis and asked, "Did he come here to entertain him? Let him answer the question immediately." He answered him confidently that he had told him all he knew, and Baresan thought about it. He allowed him to rise and said that he did not accuse him of anything. But wasn't Gilroshan a worthless fellow? Now had he contracted the believer's syndrome? And where was the commander of the knights? His servant told him that he had arrived and was awaiting an audience, and he ordered him to bring him here, whereupon the Duke appeared in the hall and knelt before the Emperor. Elrond frowned at him and thought that this was the spear of the Empire. Cedric Penn, the Emperor's hunting dog, possessed by blind loyalty. But why had he summoned him? Baresan ordered him to assign men to discreetly follow the third prince. If he could somehow bring back the Tear of Dawn, then he was to bring him to the palace at once. They could use force if he resisted. And also, if the third prince died, then they were to take his body. He wanted to make sure of his illness. Even if he loses a few bones, let them restore them at all costs. Cedric obeyed his order, and the Marquis thought that the Emperor had completely lost his mind. This is his son. After that, Baresan declared the end of the meeting and told everyone to leave, and Elrond thought that in any case he should inform His Highness about the surveillance. But how could he contact him if he was in the depths of Orax? Meanwhile, he and his companions found themselves on the top floor of the black market, where everything was much more interesting. Thurvian's gaze had already begun to cling to the magic staffs hanging on the walls and the necklaces. Everything here was elegant and shiny. She was very happy and said that this was simply an unearthly place, and MC reminded her that she needed to control herself. Carls noticed something and told His Highness to look there, and he did not like that he called him that again. The knight quickly corrected himself and pointed at a guy nearby, saying that he saw Urgal there. Noticing the guy nervously biting his nails, Gilroshan wondered what he was even doing there. And why was he acting like that? He was twitching like a dog, holding in his stool. He whispered to his knight that he was going to cause them trouble and suggested that they all pretend they hadn't noticed him. Thompson asked if they knew the guy. MC confirmed it and said that they weren't on very good terms with him. He would even say awkward. The guy looked at him and nervously grimaced, saying that he was heading their way. Urgal approached them and nervously asked, "They saw him, right?" He was so happy to meet them. Gilroshan wondered why he was acting so unnaturally friendly. He immediately understood that the conversation would be very awkward and passed by him, saying that it was mutual, but they would chat another time. Now they were very busy. Urgal excitedly extended his hand to Gilroshan and called out to him, trying to stop him, but his mouth was immediately shut by Carls, and he looked at him threateningly, saying that his lord was hiding his identity, so let him not say his name. As soon as he answered him that he understood everything, he let him go. After that, he told Gilroshan that if he bought several items, the price would be lower. He offered him to come with him. After all, they had been together for so long, and he raised an eyebrow in confusion, noting that he would find himself as if nothing had happened. He thinks he is definitely up to something. He waved his hand and refused his offer and was about to say goodbye to him, but the guy ran to him and whispered that he would be honest. He came here to buy a balance shield. MC thought it was the player's favorite item. He came for it too. He asked, so what? Maybe they had the same goal. The top floor was the only place to find a shield on this continent, so he didn't think he came here just for that. Urgal remained silent, not knowing what to say, and he asked, was he trying to embarrass him? He awkwardly said that it was about money, and then whispered that he didn't have enough coins. As soon as he found out about this, Gilroshan smirked and decided to mock him. He pretended not to hear him, and Ergal, blushing with shame, loudly declared that he had no money. MC said that he understood everything, but even if he didn't try to act like a modest guy, it didn't suit him. And how much money does he have now? He looked up at him worriedly, and MC ordered him to give him all the money, which made Carl slightly upset, but Thompson was delighted. After that, he moved all his 92 gold coins to his inventory and asked, he just has to get the balance shield for him, right? Don't worry, he keeps his promises. But he can't do it for free. He has conditions. Noticing his displeased look, he told him not to look at him like that. This request is not at all easy. Once they leave this place, let him reveal his identity to him. Otherwise, he will return his money. They shook hands in agreement, and Gil Roshan thought, since he was trying to get the balance shield, maybe he also wanted to stop the Death of Sons event. Someone interrupted his thoughts, asking, wasn't his mentor here just now? They looked around and noticed that she was indeed nowhere to be found. He thought that it might even be for the best. They could get the key while they were looking for her. He ordered Carls to find her and then meet here. After that, he came closer to him and quietly said that when he saw her, he should ask her to increase the shield with an illusion spell. He took out 2 bags of coins from his inventory, and Carls said that he wanted to ask him something. When did he learn to use inventory magic? He told him that he just kept trying, and somehow he started to get it. Knight was delighted by his answer and asked, he practiced it non-stop, right? He was so proud of him, and Thurvian would be so delighted. He smiled nervously, and thought that the inventory function he received as a reward for coming here was considered a convenient spell in this world. That's why they were so surprised that Gil Roshan, the Prince of the Magic Empire, learned to use it. After that, the knight went to look for the woman, and he and Ergal approached the shopkeeper and asked about the price of the Shield of Balance. The girl told them that it was currently worth 120 gold, and Ergal noted with disappointment that it used to cost 110. MC told the shopkeeper that she had quoted him a price 10 gold more than his friend, and she said that it was because they were new to the upper floor. All the prices of the upper floor magic items vary depending on the circumstances. He smirked and thought that he understood everything. When newcomers go up to the upper floor, 2 things happen. They either get beaten up after buying an item, or they get involved in gambling, in which all the money is taken. The girl asked if they were ready to buy the shield, and he thought that he had to get 3 items from this floor: the bow of Swift Strike, the magical accessory Forest Bracelet, and the Shield of Balance. If it weren't for the 92 gold that Ergal gave him, he wouldn't have been able to afford the balance shield. How did he plan to buy all of this with only 30 gold in his pocket? If he had fallen into a scammer's den, then he should act like one. He walked closer to the saleswoman and said that he would buy it. But did they happen to sell death bones? She smiled and quietly handed him the keys, whispering that they did sell it, and that was exactly what she wanted to offer him. Let him take the key and go up to the 3rd room on the 2nd floor. If he earned as much money as possible, then he should definitely come back for the shield. He smiled and told her that he would do so, and he realized that she liked the fact that he had fallen into her trap. He felt a chill run down his spine, as if someone was staring at his back, and when he turned around, he saw a couple of displeased looks on him. Thurvian was so furious that she said she trusted him and followed him here, and he decided to spend all the money on gambling? She started waving her fists in rage and exclaimed, has he become a gambling slacker again? He told her that it was not so and asked Carls to help him. But he only shook his head negatively, and he thought that because of the previous version of the prince, their reaction was quite justified. His mentor said that they were leaving right now, and then he grabbed her hand and asked his companions to listen to him. Carls put his hand on the woman's shoulder and suggested that she listen to him after all, and under the influence of his touch, she calmed down and agreed to this, which greatly angered the prince. Because she did not even want to listen to him. He asked everyone to stand in a circle and asked, gambling is betting money without confidence in winning, right? However, now he is 100% sure of winning. They gave him displeased looks, and Carls noted that this is the first sign of gambling addiction. He said that he does it because he is confident in his success, and not because he wants to participate in games. For example, when he defeated Gromhart and the Marcus, he needs certain magic items, and this is the best way to stop the disaster in Orax. So, he asks them to trust him, as he trusted all of them. Carl smiled and said that if he said it so confidently, then he would trust him, and Thurvian also agreed. Ergal wanted to say something, and Gil Roshan asked discontentedly, does he want to return the money? Does he really not want to get the shield anymore? He decided it would be better not to say anything in this case, and MC said that if no one else had any objections, then they should go to the 2nd floor. The game began. Gil Roshan had already won a couple of times, which made his companions immensely happy. His rival named Hyran said that she was always lucky, besides, her gaming skills had not gone anywhere. but she rarely loses twice in a row. It seems that luck is on his side today. She smiled and thought that something was wrong. She was deliberately losing 2 rounds in a row, and he seemed to not care. Judging by his clothes and his companions, he is not from around here. Maybe he is just stupid, but she can't be sure. MC apologized to her with an awkward smile and said that he seemed to be incredibly lucky today, so if she didn't mind, they could raise the stakes. Holding back a smile, she pursed her lips and worriedly asked them to wait, then covered her face with her hands and thought that this was exactly what she wanted. He is a typical gambler. They are all the same. He has fallen into the lion's den, and no matter how hard he tries, she will not be able to win. Today, she will suck all the blood out of him and make him her slave for the rest of his days. Noticing how she covers her face and shakes occasionally, Carls was worried that she might be ill, and Thurvian suggested that she was crying because she lost a lot. They started to feel sorry for her, and Gilroshan thought, why would she cry? She hadn't lost that much. She was a snake who would never lose. Thurvian leaned towards him worriedly and suggested that he not raise the stakes because she was about to cry, and he smiled nervously, mentally telling her not to fall for this show. With such gullibility, they would easily lose their souls and money. His opponent finally uncovered her face and wiped her tears with a smile, saying that she wanted to sneeze. Thurvian and Carls were upset, probably because she still wasn't crying, and the girls said that she thought their attitude was strange. It turned out that it was all about the low stakes. They shouldn't worry, she wasn't playing with her own money, they could just name the amount they wanted. MC said that he was glad to hear it, and his opponent urged him to place his bet. He looked at her with a grin and thought that he was glad to see Hyran again. She doesn't know him, but he knows everything about her. He said that he would not detain her, and decided to continue the game with the thought that it was time to serve the next dish.